Hafaday and welcome everyone to the Guam Congress Building. The Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture is now called to order. Today's Thursday, October 19, 2023. The time is 3:15 p.m. Notices for this public hearing were sent to the Guam Daily Post and posted on the Government of Guam Public Notice Portal on Thursday, October 12, and Tuesday, October 17, 2023. Notices were also sent by email to all senators and main media broadcasting outlets, and this hearing is being live streamed on the Guam Legislature's YouTube channel. The general rules of conduct are that I will first introduce the agenda for today's oversight hearing and a summary of the issue before we receive testimony from the panel. After panel testimony, we will open up to questions and comments from the senators. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chair before speaking. Begin by stating their name for record-keeping purposes. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of my colleagues today, beginning with Senator Jesse Lujan, Senator Roy Kanata, Senator Tom Fisher, Senator Chris Duenas, Senator Chris Barnett, Senator Joe San Augustine. Thank you, colleagues, for being here today. I'd like to thank all of you who are here as well. So my staff is still making copies of some of the last-minute written testimony we received so that we can provide it to the senators and the sign-in sheets. If you haven't signed in and you wish to testify, please sign in. All right, so the Chamorro Land Trust informed me that they had a meeting today and were unable to be present. And I informed them that we would, this is their property, and I do intend to have another hearing to hear their concerns regarding the cleanup of this property and any impediments to the future use of this property. Thank you. However, I think I just received a letter today that Mr. John Birch has been appointed the acting director of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission for today, and he's here to testify. Okay, so we will proceed. Today's hearing is a follow-up to a previous hearing which was held by the Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture on May 17, 2023. Today's oversight hearing is called to continue the discussion on the critical need for a new hospital, and more particularly, the discussion on the viability of Satpon Point or Ypao Point in Tamuning. This is the location of the old hospital. Sometimes it's called Oka Point, Ypao Point, or Satpon Point, and we're going to call it Ypao Point, according to the advice we received from the Director of Land Management at the last hearing. Okay? It's the site of the old hospital. So it's behind the loop. It was the site used as a debris site after Typhoon Mawar and after other storms as well. All right. To recap, the Army Corps of Engineers in 2019 reported there was an urgent requirement for $21 million in repairs to maintain the hospital's current GMH's accreditation. In response, the legislature established the Hospital Capital Improvement Fund to address essential projects, including repairs to electrical panel and roof, and appropriated $10 million in the FY 2020 budget for those projects. The funding was again reappropriated in February 2020 for capital improvement initiatives in Public Law 3573. The governor at that time noted that she had asked GITA to consider financing options to accomplish intent of the bill, stating, "I hope we can work together to give GMHA the help it needs. No one wants GMHA to wait one day longer than necessary, and we all want to help our hospital right away." The legislature made two further attempts at providing this funding, and a reported surplus of $40.1 million in 2019 and $46.3 million in 2020. Yet the hospital, according to its most recent oversight hearing, never received that money. The assessment of the Army Corps that was published in April 2020 stated that the 21 required by GMH for repairs to support the reaccreditation of the facility and eliminate hazards to life, health, and safety. These repairs consist of roof replacement, exterior building repairs, HVAC repairs, life safety repairs, and fire sprinkler repairs. In the 2021 budget, there was appropriated an additional $15 million for high-priority capital improvement projects, including the electronic health record system, maternal child health upgrades, and electrical panel upgrades. The total then was $25 million, exceeding the Army Corps of Engineers recommendation, but $10 million of the funding, again, according to GMH, was never received. Public Law 3656, sponsored by Senator Joseph Augustine, was again to authorize $35 million from EITC refunds and FY22 for lease payments for up to 40 years on the lease-to-own basis of a new medical complex. Matrix was contracted by the Guam Economic Development Authority, tasked with developing a medical campus through 9 task orders. There was a requirement for at least 2 presentations on the medical campus to policymakers and to host at least 2 forums for the medical and public health industries due late August 22. Yet there has been no presentation to the Guam legislature regarding that medical complex. In August 2023, the Office of Public Accountability found that GIDA was not in compliance with the Guam procurement law and regulations and in contracting with Matrix. Today, we're conducting our second oversight hearing on the viability of Ypao Point because of the pressing need for a new hospital and the stated desire for a medical campus, and to see if we can find any solutions in the middle of that. During the first hearing, there was testimony by medical professionals, to include the Guam Medical Association president and president of the medical staff at the current Guam Memorial Hospital. And sorry, we'll discuss that later. I'd like to right now put up a map of the property, if we could. This is the first slide, thank you. All right, this again was provided by the Department of Land Management at the last hearing. The part in yellow is the property on Ypao Point that is currently reserved for the shrine for our ancestors to be re-enshrined, those that were removed from other locations. They're going to be placed there. The memorial has been designed, and so that property is set aside. The property right below the yellow portion there, you can see 5 units. That's the property that's currently used by Sagan Katuran Chamorro, the cultural center. So the property in the yellow line, it's kind of a thin yellow line up top and adjacent to the dark yellow. That's the property we're talking about today. That's what I'm referring to when I say Ypao Point. The property to the left of that. Yeah, that, this property, okay? All right, thank you. Is there another slide after this? Yes, this is the property shaded. Okay, thank you. All right. This overlooks, of course, Ypao and Tumon Bay. Is there another photo after this? Okay, please hold. Please hold on the slides. Thank you. All right, and so according to the testimony from the last hearing in 1949, Governor Skinner set out to build a new civilian hospital. He brokered a deal between Frank Perez, who was the family who owned this property, and the Army regarding surplus construction equipment, which would be of use to build a civilian hospital in exchange for the property at Ypao Point. The intent was to build a civilian hospital. After the transfer of the equipment to the government of Guam was executed, the Navy stepped in and exercised its rights under the surplus property regulation and took the equipment. Consequently, no transfer of construction equipment was ever made to Frank Perez. And this is testimony from the Perez family. Eventually, a civilian hospital was built in 1956 with 230 beds. It offered acute, psychiatric, and long-term care services. In 1974, the Department of Interior purchased and transferred the nearby medical center of the Marianas to serve as the new Guam Memorial Hospital. It was initially constructed by the Catholic Diocese to serve as a private maternal child health facility. So that's our current hospital site. In 1978, the hospital relocated to our current site, but the Guam Mental Health continued to operate out of the old Ypao Point site. And they were established as a separate agency from Guam Memorial Health at that time. There is a law in 2001 which authorized the Chamorro Land Trust Commission to enter into a general lease for the commercial development of Oka Point. That law continues to exist today. That's since 2001. A general lease for the commercial development of Oka Point. In 2003, Governor Camacho signed a request for development proposals for approximately 48 acres of land at Ypao Point. The objective was to generate revenue to fund the operations of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission and to generate jobs and increase economic activity for the Guam economy. The committee report on the bill notes that the land had been sitting idle since the Department of Works declared it a hazard over 15 years ago. The committee report also notes that the leaseholders of CLTC residential property have been waiting for over 5 years for the commission to provide the needed infrastructure so they could construct their dream house. Each time the commission members are pressured by the leaseholders, they refer to the need to lease out Oka Point so they could obtain the needed bond financing to complete the much anticipated infrastructure, unquote. Today, most of this property remains idle, and despite the authority to develop and lease the property over the years, its current use is pretty much a debris site. In response to Governor Camacho's RFP, there were 3 proposals. Only one qualified, but I just wanted to point out that that proposal that qualified was for a 193 two-story mansion units, 108 one-story mansion units, an international hotel, leisure and fitness centers, business park, and mall. Some of the other proposals submitted for the same property was up to 3 500 condominium apartment units, a convention center together, and an entertainment center and retail shops. In March 2017, the Chamorro Land Trust Commission designated the property for commercial leasing via resolution, stating that the property was worth $19 million at the time. There has been no lease of this property since 2017, or even prior. In May 2023, the committee, we had our oversight hearing, and there were several issues laid out on the table as to why this property would not be suitable for a hospital. So the Administrator Lillian Perez-Posadas from the Guam Memorial Hospital stated, quote, "As a leader, I have an obligation, I have a duty to make sure that the healthcare services such as the hospital is accessible and available to the people of Guam and the community of Guam, not just for a certain community like the medical community," unquote. In May 2023, the governor issued a press release citing problems with Ypao Point, including that the property is too small. It sits on a geological fault line and a high risk of the ground breaking in an earthquake. It would require installation of new water and sewer infrastructure in horrible environmental condition that it will take 3 years to improve before construction can even begin, and that the CLTC is looking to lease the property to generate revenue through a commercial lease. All of the senators have also been provided a copy of the Matrix report, which is Matrix's, what we've paid millions, at least $1 million, for a plan for them to assess the sites and to develop a preliminary plan. And it's not a design, it's a preliminary plan for a medical complex. In those documents, it was reported that all the properties considered for siting of a medical complex were either owned by the Guam Ancestral Land Commission or the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, and one was owned by the University of Guam Conservation Area. So of course we want to hear today regarding cleanup of the site and all those other impediments that were laid on the table. According to the GMH Medical Campus Master Plan prepared by Metrix, the 35-acre, they cite 35 acres, Ypao Point site was one of the 3 sites distinguished and identified as most viable by the Department of Land Management. Additionally, the drive time analysis shows Ypao has significant advantage to larger populations within 20-minute distances. Specifically, the difference is 21,955 people are more than any other site, or more than the Ypao site, are within 10 minutes. 13,352 more people are within 20 minutes of the Ypao site versus the Ypao site. There is no study detailing the benefit for southern residents by placing the hospital at Ypao versus placing it at Ypao. These are the only drive time studies that are available. And so these I can provide to anyone who wants to see them. But within the 20-minute categories, Ypao serves 66.7%, Ypao is 58.3%, Eaglesfield is 56.5%. The analysis of this site, I'm quoting now from the plan, the SWOT, S-W-O-T analysis of this site noted several strengths, Ypao site, such as proximity to aviation facilities, high population densities, and reasonable travel distances. Weaknesses include inadequate space to accommodate the replacement facility and ancillary services as required through the MAP investigations. Costly development constraints and already congested traffic in the area that would inevitably grow worse and threaten emergency vehicle access. This means that Ypao Point site fell short because the acreage was not large enough for a medical campus, according to the report. Matrix also noted that it was not responsible for identifying alternative sites for the new public hospital and medical campus, developing site selection criteria, providing the data for accessing site alternatives, and selecting the preferred site. These tasks were the responsibility of the Government of Guam agencies. This section summarizes the process that the Government of Guam completed to assist them in selecting the preferred site for the new public hospital and medical campus. That's from their report. That's simply to show that Matrix, it was not Matrix that had made determinations or did the analysis. With the exception of the drive time, they simply compiled predetermined information provided to them. One of the testimonies received in the prior oversight hearing was from Dr. Jonathan Siddell, MD, who was the president of the medical staff of the Guam Memorial Hospital at the time. The letter expressed, quote, strong support of building a new hospital on Ypao Point, unquote. The letter also stated the Medical Executive Committee already stated that they support building a new hospital and that it should be in Tamuning. The key reason is that many of the medical staff live within 10 minutes from the current hospital, and that is so they can respond to life-saving emergencies. The letter further noted that response time is critical for providers to attend to patients and, quote, without this access for providers, patients would be left with their lives at risk, unquote. We received testimony recently from the Guam Medical Association, but I believe they are here to testify today. Is that correct? Yes, all right. So I'm going to skip that. It does talk about Ypao Point and distance for medical staff. All right, according to Matrix's campus master plan. The medical campus plan requires the medical alone requires 21.3 acres, or 23 acres if you add on the 1 million square feet flex bedding. This is square feet that they need. They calculated it in square feet. So I tried to calculate it. If you take that square feet and you laid it out on a one-story building, how many acres you would need. And so their total square feet for a medical facility is about 1 million square feet. That equals to 23 acres if all on one story. That's my estimate. Ypao Point consists of, according to the Department of Land Management's testimony, 25 to 27 acres of usable space. The medical campus report cites 35 acres are available at Ypao Point. In comparison, the current GMH hospital, according to the Director of Department of Land Management and GMH, uses approximately 16 to 17 acres. For the entire medical complex, according to Matrix, they would need 1,608,000 square feet of building. And that's, if you just lay that out on one floor again, 37 acres on a single floor, not including the parking. This is just the buildings. And this does not include the assisted living. I also excluded that part. I'm just trying to show comparisons as to the size of these properties that we're talking about. So the medical campus plan cites a medical facility that would have 300 beds and flex for 300 additional beds. GMH currently has 161 acute care beds in its current facility, and of course bedding at the SNF facility as well, 40 beds. The old GMH hospital on Ypao Point years ago had 230 beds. I think we have a picture of that. I'm not sure if that's available. All right. We wanted to follow up today also on utilities. All right. There, as to Ypao Point, a GWA report states that because of unknown condition and location of the water and sewer pipes on site, it would be preferable to install new water and sewer infrastructure. So I did ask GWA for their testimony, and they did submit some testimony regarding capital improvement projects that may have a direct or indirect benefit to Guam Memorial Hospital, Oka Point. The Director of Land Management at the previous hearing testified that the Ypao Point property has 57 acres, with 25 to 27 acres being usable. Non-usable portions are due to severed easements, reserved lands for the reinterment of ancestral remains, the Naftan Manyanata, the Kutuan Chamorro Cultural Center, and a fault line. And that there are relatively new communications cable. GPA provides underground power and a redundant system to GMH. This is in contrast to the infrastructure summary for Eagles Field and the infrastructure summary for Attica, which says similar to Eagles Field. according to the matrix report, which is it would require widening to 6 lanes of travel, related improvements, traffic signals at 3 arterial road intersections. The estimated cost is $26 million. The timeline to complete improvements is estimated 2 to 3 years. That's from DPW. GPA proposes a power substation on the campus to provide sufficient power to the entire campus. Requires 1 acre for substation and supporting infrastructure. An approximate cost is $20 million plus. Improvement timeline 1 year for design, 2 years for construction. This again is for Eagles Field. And GWA for Eagles Field sites, hospital and medical campus will require a water storage tank to create sufficient pressure for domestic and fire flow. Water pump will require half an acre potential for a new GWA well to be drilled off campus. Wastewater will need significant upgrades. The estimated utility upgrades for those properties was about $100 million. Compared to the estimated utility upgrades for Ypao to be $20 million. All right. We were also told at the last hearing that there are rhino beetle and fire ant nesting sites preventing development, and that the site has been used as a staging area or a dump site for old tires, white goods, construction debris, wood waste, green waste, and that EPA suspects petroleum contamination in the area. The Department of Land Management Director stated also that according to the Department of Agriculture's biosecurity and entomological expert, it may take 1 year or 2 years to mitigate the environmental pests, and following that, according to EPA, it may take another succeeding year to remove and properly mitigate the debris and the contamination on the soil due to the operations of a construction company who got permission from the CLTC to use the site as a staging area. The company was supposed to provide fencing and clean the property. All of this, again, was testimony of the Department of Land Management. So I'd like to begin today to hear testimony. We had invited the Army Corps of Engineers, who is their representative here. If you could please join us. Thank you for being here. If you could please, and maybe the Office of Homeland Security or FEMA. I mean, FEMA's not here, but Mr. Stevis, if you could join us. All right. So we'd like to hear from you. It's our understanding that this was used as a debris site prior to Typhoon Mawar, after Typhoon Mawar, and that the FEMA has contracted the Army Corps of Engineers for cleanup, and at least partial cleanup, and so we'd just like to hear a status on that if we could. Or Mr. Stevis, if you'd like to begin and give us just a background on it, and then I'd like to hear from the Army Corps, and they also have a presentation of slides. Thank you.
No worries. So the background was post-Mawar. We had a lot of debris, and determining what is eligible and ineligible, the decision was made to basically contract it out. Decision was made to contract it out, given the fact that we also received our cost share waiver at 90/10, and this is when the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers took over the temporary debris management sites, and then also started to do the passes across the villages. Estimated timeline that we received from FEMA on the completion of clearing, at least for the Ypao point, is somewhere around mid-November. But given some of the delays with weather, and also recently with Bolavin having to secure the site, they expect maybe a potential couple-week delay in that. So sometime between mid to end of November, possibly early December would be the estimated cleanup of that. Now that's just for eligible debris. For all ineligible debris, it's going to be really within the government of Guam, collaboration between DPW, Guam Solid Waste Authority, Guam Environmental Protection Agency, to basically enact the plan to remove the ineligible waste. And I can tell you that this has really been an ongoing effort, because if you look at some of the places where they've already removed ineligible waste, within a couple of days you start to see people dumping all over again, to the point where we've actually had to have people do monitoring, consistent monitoring for these sites. Yeah, these illegal dump sites that just come up all over the place. But we're very fortunate for the USACE sites because all of that's within the contract, such as the security and the monitoring of that, and also the management. And they have a very useful dashboard.
Sorry, you said USACE, and I'm just, if you could just
sorry,
spell that out.
The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
All right, thank you. And I'm sorry, can you just state your name and position again for the record?
Yeah, Charles Esteves, Administrator for the Office of Civil Defense. And then on the disaster side, the Territorial Coordinating Officer.
Jesus Masi. All right, and the representative from Army Corps, if you could state your name and position for the record, and please proceed. The microphone. Yeah.
Half a day and good afternoon. My name is Emmanuel Torres. I am the mission manager for the debris mission related to Super Typhoon Mawar. Like Mr. Esteves was saying, we are at this point in several TDMS sites, and today we're looking at Ypao Point. So we, as part of the debris management plan, we got different temporary debris management sites, that's TDMS. At Ypao, at September 20th, we had about 25,000 cubic yards of debris left, not including ineligible debris. At this point, we're well beyond that, and we've cleared the site. We have less than a third left. So as you guys are seeing on the site, this was when we received Ypao Point. That was the entry. Material was not sorted or separated, so our contractors had to start separating material into what was eligible, ineligible, vegetative versus scrap metal, and C&D. If you can scroll to the next. As you can see, we started creating pathways among the debris. Here you're seeing white goods, and we have a one EPA vehicle in front over. You can skip to the next. And then as the time progressed and our contractors spent more time in the site, they started organizing the sites into the type of material and different waste streams. You will note on the right of the screen that you have white goods. When we say white goods, we refer to air conditioners, water dispensers, refrigerators. So you will see they have an X or a 0. So basically, they established a system to determine which elements were dirty, meaning they still contained Freon and couldn't be recycled until that was also eliminated, or if they already had an X over the 0, that means that they were ready to move on and recycle that global. Next. Again, at this point, we're looking at white goods, but to the right, you will start seeing piles of ineligible debris. In this pile specific, we have photovoltaic cells, we have some e-waste in the form of screens and monitors, computers. So we also had to separate that for GovWAM and WAM EPA to take care of in the future. If you scroll. So to the left, you will see one of the vegetation piles that we had on the site after it was separated and organized. Fortunately, at this site, we did not have any fire ant report, so this was all taken to Manita Farms. And then, just for reference, just another image or exhibit of what the pathways through the material looked, of what is plastics and other ineligible debris. If you can scroll next. So today, the site looks like this. As you can see, it's been cleared pretty much of all the debris. To the left of the screen, you will have a pile of ineligible debris in the form of ceramics, porcelains that were deemed non-eligible. And then to the left, you will see the only remaining pile of eligible material for our contract. Beyond that, there is a pile of ineligible material that GovWAM is taking care of. If you hit next. And for a graphic image, you can see here that the ineligible debris is very minimal. It's about 1,500 cubic yards, and it's been organized into one corner or to the south corner of the site. If you scroll next. And then here, You can see the one pile to the left, to the right, that's going to be removed by the contractor under the United States Army Corps contract. In the middle, that's a pile of MWS that's actively being removed by GovWam. And to the left of the image, you will see a smaller pile of C&D that our contractor is separating. Like Mr. Esteves said earlier, what we've encountered in this specific pile of debris is that within the pile, as we start, removing and clearing it, there is a significant amount of unexpected ineligible material in the form of tanks, gas tanks. And so if a tank has a valve on it, we can't really accept it because then it will be returned, or the whole load will be returned from Global or Leon. So right now, that's also adding to the timeline. We were expecting a November 10 to 16 end date, but between the time that we had to spend preparing for Bolavin and then the time that we have to invest in reseparating this pile, that's impacting our schedule a little bit. So if you scroll next, there might be another image. No, that was it.
So could you restate your time frame now?
So right now it's between November 16, December 1, but we're really working to get it done by November 16th to the 20th. We're hoping that we do finish on time.
That is awesome.
Yep.
I just think that is really exciting for all of us. I speak on behalf of everyone to say that is a beautiful sight to see. And I think in our discussions earlier, you told me we can look forward to Tizen looking like that soon?
Yes. So once we start completing the villages right away cleanup, then we are going to focus on Tijen. And the contractor, as you see, they're very diligent about organizing the sites. Tijen right now has a similar appearance. It's just the amount of material there is significant. So hopefully, once we finish Jigo and Haget, we can start putting more manpower into Tijen.
All right. So I guess, thank you again, Mr. Torres. But Mr. Esteves, can you clarify? So if Army Corps is finished between November 16 and December 1, and there's still that small pile that's for the government of Guam, what is your timeline for that?
Yeah, so I would have to defer the answer to DPW only because their assets, they're really working in tandem with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineer. And so assets may be diverted to doing village cleanups and passes and not so much concentrate at one point. So I would say the timeline for the most part is in sync with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineer to actually close out a site. But I don't have the exact timeline, Madam Speaker.
Okay, so it's possible to get it done within the same time frame.
It's very possible, yeah.
All right, okay. All right, well, thank you very much. Colleagues, I'd like to hold all our questions to the end, but for this panel, because the Army Corps person's here, I'd like to dismiss him if we can. And if you have any questions for Mr. Esteves or the Army Corps? Any questions? Senator Barnett?
I'd like to thank you for attending the hearing. It's very rare that we get to hear from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Not that you're chopped liver, Mr. Charles. But I did have a couple of questions. So can you again state what was your experience relative to little fire ants at that site?
So typically what we do is we test each vegetation pile for fire ants, and this one didn't test positive. So that was transferred to Manhita Farms. They were, they shred it and it becomes mulch.
So in previous testimony, the Director of Land Management had stated that there was an area adjacent to the dump site that was the most heavily infested area for the fire ants. And he had reported a figure which he was quoted as saying is kind of astounding, 20 billion. Queen of fire ants, 20 billion, they say are in the area. 30, they tell me it's 30 billion. Did you see 30 billion fire ants up there?
So to the best of my knowledge, the only pile that has tested positive for fire ants was the pile at Manilao, and that was a bit Manilao. Manila, yeah.
Manila.
Manila, sorry. Yeah. So that has, to the best of my knowledge, been the only PAL. Of course, I arrived here as mission manager on the 15th, and I didn't get any feedback on fire ants on the vegetation PAL that was there when I arrived. So it might be a previous pile.
I just also wanted, Madam Chair, it's like the former director of the Land Trust had also testified on the record that a certain area where the fire ants and rhino beetles were found, but in the meetings of the Department of Agriculture, it was said these invasive species know no boundaries. So I would just take that to mean that had there been an infestation at this level, that it would have probably spread over to the adjacent dump site. And you're saying it didn't?
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, I have not received that feedback.
The former director of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission also testified that there was no thought as to the environmental impact of dumping on our property. We now have an ecological and environmental catastrophe. Would you say that the site up at Ypao Point is environmental and ecological catastrophe?
So to the best of my knowledge, I can say that we are taking care of at least the white goods that are dirty. We, take out the freon, and that has been given a special identifier number by Guam EPA, and that will be taken off island to be recycled. Over.
And based on your testimony, the slides you showed us, the lion's share of the remaining debris that has to be removed is the responsibility of the Guam Environmental Protection Agency and the government of Guam in general?
So about 1,500 cubic yards of material will still remain there, and that'll be a responsibility of Guam EPA.
How many, could you give us an idea, how many pickup loads is that?
So if a truck,
I mean, is it anything like we see at Tizen? So it's little? Okay, thank you. Nothing further, Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, senators? Senator Kanata?
Mr. Torres, I just wanted to say, Masi, on behalf of myself and the entire body and the entire people of Guam, for all you guys' tireless efforts in sanitizing our debris sites and entire island. It's been a tireless effort, and I know you guys have been working very hard, day after day, night after night, and a lot of sweat and blood out there, I'm sure, and it's very much appreciated. We thank you guys for your service again. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you again, Mr. Torres. Thank you again, Mr. Esteves. Thank you. Very exciting news. Maybe we could follow that up with Guam EPA. Guam EPA. I guess just to clarify, if you concur and if there is any, if you're going to have any impediment in removing the remaining debris that's there, or working with, as Mr. Esteves said, DPW and the other agencies of government of Guam. Director.
Good afternoon, Madam Speaker, Senators. So we do have...
Sorry, just state your name and
Michelle
maybe...
Lastimosa, Administrator for Guam EPA.
Thank you.
So we do have a preliminary amount of ineligible debris up at that Ypao Point. So about 1,200 cubic yards of ineligible debris, which is about 84 dump truck loads of solid waste that's going to have to be disposed of.
I'm sorry, I was distracted. Can you repeat that, please? Sorry.
So there's about 1,200 cubic yards of ineligible debris that will be left for the government of Guam to dispose of. In previous discussions with the debris task force that was formed, I don't know if DPW is going to procure services or transfer that material using their own resources to Luzon.
You're not part of that plan?
We are part of the plan. I mean, we oversee it,
Okay.
but we aren't responsible for
All right.
disposition and disposal of that ineligible waste per se.
Okay. I guess, Mr. Estevez, if we can call you back to clarify this. Yes. How do we get to zero on that debris?
So the Department of Public Works, you know, as Ms. Lastamosa stated, will either use equipment that they have, and whatever equipment they don't have, then they'll just have to go through the procurement process of getting additional heavy equipment. So delays, current procurement delays, you know, may extend their ability to move, you know, 200 some loads of ineligible debris to the waste sites.
Have they been doing that?
They have been, yes, throughout the island and throughout the different villages. As I stated earlier, really it's between Department of Public Works in tandem with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineer on where the heavy equipment is most needed to ensure that we don't have these illegal dump sites that pop up or reappear after a site's already been cleared.
Yes, I know that's everyone's concern, that we don't want that to be restored. But, okay, so you're saying 1,200 cubic yards, about 200 loads. DPW is aware. They know that they're supposed to work in tandem with Army Corps. We're hoping this will all be done when Army Corps is done, which is November to December 1st, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Does EPA see any other issue with the removal of the debris or clearing the site?
I guess it would all depend on the ineligible debris. So right now, Army Corps and their contractors have control over that site. And so until that site is officially closed, you know, through an approved closeout process, then GovGuam can see what material is left behind. You know, we did take pictures. Our staff went out there today to kind of take a preliminary look to see what's still left. And there are canisters, bikes, construction and demolition debris that doesn't fall under FEMA's definition. But there's still about 1,200 cubic yards.
And what is the plan for those in all the sites? What is your approved plan for removal of those ineligible debris?
Right, so from again, like Mr. Estevez mentioned, there is the plan that either DPW and their staff will truck that material out with their equipment, or they will have to procure services to haul that material out to a disposal site, whether it be a recycling facility or Luzon.
All right, so there's nothing to impede DPW from doing that, except DPW's availability and availability of its personnel and its equipment.
Right, I think
Okay.
that's always,
All
that's
right.
been the problem, is
Yeah.
that there's a lack of resource
Okay. And
rental
Guam
equipment.
EPA, I'm just want to make sure you agree and they're good to go. Okay, thanks. Any other questions for Guam EPA senators? Senator Lujan?
Are we shipping any of these waste off island, or, I mean, you're just saying they're either going to a recyclable entity or Lejeune? Are any of them going to be shipped off island?
So all of the eligible items that are recycled under the different facilities, the tires go off island, I believe to India right now, and all the metals are going to Asia. The recycling white goods are going to Asia. So everything else that's not recyclable will be disposed of at the Luzon landfill.
Okay. We talked about, of course, the ability of Public Works to remove all this based on their access to equipment and all that. What role does solid waste have in this? Because that was removed from DPW, and so what role does solid waste have in this whole, I mean, because we don't hear anything about them removing any of these.
I'm sorry, I'm Roland Gutierrez. I'm the Air and Land Programs Administrator for Guam EPA.
Uh-huh.
And so, I'm sorry, what's I'm sorry, what was the question again, sir?
Question, what role does solid waste have in this whole thing?
So currently, the way the disaster debris plan is written, DPW is responsible for the disposal of the waste. The only thing that GSWA has is to accept the waste that's brought to them. When they separated the two entities and they formed the Guam Solid Waste Authority, it did not transfer with them the role of disaster debris collection to GSWA. So it still remains with DPW.
Okay, so again, at this point, we're trying to find out whether DPW has the capability of doing it or procuring it to an outside entity, right?
So basically what they would do is they would use the available resources, and whatever resources they can, they would contract out, but it would still be directed by DPW, the actual removal. And then the plan for the disposition of the waste, we would approve where it's going.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, because, I mean, it's something that we may have to tweak in regards to law, in regards to the duties of solid waste.
Right. So in the new plan that was written, we need to stand up, and after all of the debris is cleaned up, we need to work with Homeland, and we're supposed to put contracts in place, prior to this, so that it's all set, so that it's done, not contract after the storm. So that's something that Guam EPA, DPW, and Guam Homeland will be working on together to update and get contracts in place as required by the plan that FEMA approved right after Malwar.
Okay, because, again, with DPW, I mean, I don't think they have the manpower, and the resources.
Right.
Again.
So the contracts, that's very important prior to the storm, so that they can be actuated and put in place after the storm, rather than trying to contract with them after the storm. It should be done before, as per the plan.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Lujan. Any other questions for Guam EPA or Office of Civil Defense? Senators? Senator Augustine.
When you mentioned the cell, do you know what the shelf life for the current cells up there at Luzon?
Wait, I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
You mentioned that whatever debris is removed, it's going to be coordinated by DPW through Guam Solid Waste, send it to the cells, right, up at Luzon?
Yes, sir.
Do you know what the shelf life is for Luzon?
I'm sorry?
Do you know the shelf life? When is it due where we're going to need to build another cell? And who's going to foot the bill? I'm just trying to understand. Everything is talking about how we're going to move things, what we need to move, and I'm just curious about who's going to pay for what.
So the government of Guam will be paying for all ineligible items that are not taken by FEMA, and so it'll be the responsibility of the government of Guam, and they will actually pay GSWA to receive those, refuse.
Okay, and on the sites that they clear, are you guys going to give the green light that the sites are in fact clear of any contamination?
I have to ask Mr. Nicholas, our solid waste program manager. He's currently most update in regards to the life of the cell and the current construction of the new cell.
Okay, well, as you're getting that answer, can you tell me, is Guam EPA going to clear, when they clear Oka Point, when all the debris is gone, is Guam EPA going to say that everything is good to go? No contamination, no nothing. That's what I need to know, because you can say you're overseeing it. That doesn't mean it's clear.
So prior to the storm, and maybe about 5 years back, there was a phase 1 environmental assessment that was done at Ypao. And then the phase 2 was actually scheduled, and then Typhoon Mawar hit. So we do have, a mechanism or procedure using our brownfields money, or 128A grant money, to conduct an environmental site assessment phase 2, which can include soil analysis, and any other analytical tests that could determine whether or not contamination exists on that property. So we could leverage our grant funding to establish whether or not any contamination exists when the cleanup is done.
Okay, I can understand that, what you did before the typhoon, but as a result of the typhoon, everything that's up there has double, triple, or whatever number of times it grew. I don't think at the time you did your grant, you were measuring that load. And after all the work that's going on up there, Oka Point, I'm just curious is that we want to make sure that when they say it's cleared, contaminant-free, it's cleared. Not later on to hear that, well, we only had a grant for this. I just want to make sure, bases are covered. That's all I'm asking.
Right.
So make sure it's covered.
So this grant money and the analysis that would be conducted on the property would then give us a clearer picture of what we need to do to label it clear and clean. So let's say we find contamination up there, depending on the extent of the contamination, how far and widespread the contamination is, will determine how much it'll cost to, to remove or clean up
clear
the,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So, that would be the first step is that.
Yeah, I was just curious about that because as everybody wants to think that it's going to be clean tomorrow, it's not. It's all going to be clean November 1st. No, it's not. You still need to go back there and take a look. Okay, we got rid of it all. Did DPW clear it all? Probably not. Where we at? What's the timetable? Sure, the goal has always been to match with FEMA. Fine. Army Corps, fine. It's like a matchbook. Not every matchstick is the same. Okay? And then going back to the issue of the cell, maybe, Primo?
Glenn Nicholas, Guam Ypao Solid Waste Program Manager. Just to add to Michelle's comment on the cleanup site, we'll give you an example of the previous typhoons, specifically the Robbie Weber Field and the Northern Sports Complex. Those sites are 10-acre, 20-acre altogether. That was used in previous super typhoons with debris that was left after Army Corps had cleaned up everything in FEMA. There was a lot of unauthorized debris that was left on site. Partnering up with, I think it was GURA, we came up with a grant. We have the Brownfields grant that we leveraged to do assessments for the site, and Guam Ypao actually utilized $200,000 for site assessment and cleanup, and the removal of the hundreds and thousands of tires that were there on the site as a result of that storm or typhoon. So that's an example of something that we can apply at the Oka site, and I think that's already underway as we speak. So in terms of contamination, we hope that we did the separation as best as we can to alleviate all that, hazardous contamination that we're all concerned with. But I think that the contamination that is on the site has already been identified, and based on the areas that were used to store a lot of these waste streams, that we can narrow it down to certain sites for additional sampling if need be.
And to add to that, on all the sites that we collected household hazardous waste or any type of oil or everything, we placed them on the hardened areas of the site, and so they were all under basically asphalt or concrete, and any spills were cleaned up with spill kits. So we don't think there's going to be any type of major contamination on the site from the debris collection.
That's great to know. Yeah. I mean, that's, wow, surprised me. Going back now to the cell, Alazon, was anybody going to give me the shelf life? I mean, how much shelf they got left? And the reason why is because if Guam Solid Waste comes back to us and says, hey, I need $10 million to build another cell. I'm just curious about how much money GovGuam is going to get from all the federal assistance that we can figure out how to fund that program. Because you're going to tell DPW, hey, that's GovGuam's problem. Get rid of it. Move it out. I'm just curious. Do you know how much space is left? If not, just say you don't know and we'll wait for solid waste.
I don't know how much space is left because on the closure part of it, there's like cell 2 still kind of open. There's a design where as it's closing and the opening of cell 3, it just opened up like 2 years ago. So, and then during that time period, it was COVID, so that kind of slowed a lot of the waste streams down because of development. Unfortunately, again, it's this typhoon that generated a whole lot of waste that was not anticipated. But, for what it's worth, this typhoon the waste that was generated during the storm was going to be waste generated anyway. So it was just sooner than later. And you're right, we have to be concerned with the cells, but we're hoping that because we also had just recently approved a couple of months ago the Integrated Solid Waste Master Management Plan and the Guam Zero Waste Master Plan, we're diverting a lot of waste streams from that site, so it kind of like evens out in the wash. But we just need to be more aggressive in recycling and removing recyclables, compostables from the Luzon landfill to extend the use of that landfill.
Understood. And you're right. No matter what, the waste that was generated through the typhoon, but really when you think about it, and I know the people of Guam noticed that after the typhoon, really, where did all this trash come from? Did it really break the house? No, it didn't. There's a bunch of trash that you should have taken out a long time, but they had a site to dump it. Then it became a problem. That's what I worry about. We can talk about, yeah, it's going to end up there, but not everything comes out until there's an opportunity. You drive around now in Guam, what site was cleared in what minutes? All of a sudden, somebody else dumped, and you guys are probably like, we just cleared this. That's what I'm concerned about. And it's going to happen with Tamuning and wherever. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. I'm sure we can dive deeper into solid waste, but on Ypao Point, very glad to hear there was a plan in place and we're going by plan. Right, thank you. Senator Barnett.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Esteves, you mentioned procurement delays. Could you elaborate?
Yeah, so there's just been going through the fiscal year. First of all, the reconciliation of accounts and reestablishment of accounts and the different contracts. Of course, that always causes a delay as the emergency doesn't necessarily follow our fiscal laws, and so that's just one small delay. And then just the acting chief procurement officers, working with them.
Yeah, I don't even know if this body is aware of who the acting chief procurement officer even is. It was my understanding that Claudia Akfaji, the former chief procurement officer, she's no longer.
Right now, we're working with Linda Banas from Deputy Director of DPW as the acting chief procurement officer.
So, is her is she on island? Is her absence or wearing those two hats of delaying procurement any more?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, we had a meeting with her before she left, and we have requisitions in the system, and so just making sure that the procurement record is complete, ready for her signature, or her delegation of authority.
Would you say that the procurement has been any more difficult in post-Mawar compared to other storms?
I think procurement has always been the same for as long as I've been here.
Thank you, Charles. I just wanted to ask the ineligible debris. How does it get into the dump site? Is that just oversight of the people who are manning the entry, or is it just incidental? Is that a normal kind of thing? We're talking about, I did the math, 1.5 tons, right?
So basically, ineligible debris, our definition of what C&D is versus the eligible definition of what C&D is are two different things.
I'm sorry, could you just explain what C&D means for
construction and demolition debris?
Okay.
So that's the main thing that's up there right now. So FEMA, so they'll bring us a toilet, and that's considered C&D as part of the waste stream that we regulate here. But they'll turn around and say, no, that's not part of C&D, because where did the toilet come from? But to my understanding, and from the understanding from the storm we spoke, I mean, buildings go down, so a toilet gets broken in the building. But a lot of it you see that was coming in, you could see they were sitting out there. They're just bringing in. And basically we were told not to turn them away if it is an actual waste stream that we have there. And a lot of times too, like I said, we had my whole staff, which is like less than 20 staff, plus we had 25, I believe, individuals from AmeriCorps, and we were spread real thin. And so when there's 6 people dumping and there's one guy standing there, sometimes they're throwing things in that are not supposed to be thrown in, and they'll throw something on top of it. By the time we come back, we can't see it. But according to, we pretty much, I believe, better than 90% separation rate, and I believe that's a minimum amount of waste, 1,500 cubic yards of what they actually took out of there. That's a minuscule portion. And if you can ask them what the total volume that was taken out of Ypao that was eligible. I could say probably that's maybe less than 5%. I would say 3% at the most. 1,500 cubic yards is nothing.
Thank you for that. Are you able so you were instructed to not turn anyone away? Who gave
Well,
those instructions?
we were accepting eligible items depending on what it was. We were told to take garbage from day one, and so we were taking garbage and separating it, and then we were told to take C and D. And obviously, there's a list that we can take from. I mean, we literally printed the list from FEMA for our staff. But when they come in and they're screaming and they have a toilet or a bathtub and it's C and D, we're like, okay, I guess we're gonna take it. So, and even the tires at one point we were taking gas cylinders and these things we know they're not eligible, but we were instructed to take it so that, we can clean the island. And I mean, at the time the people were all, no power, no nothing. They're just, I guess, trying to go and throw some trash.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Nothing further, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So again, maybe we could hear Army Corps just tell us how much debris did you remove and in what time period? Because we've got 1,500 cubic yards left.
Yeah, so at the time that I came here, we had about 25,000 cubic yards left, and
Sorry, say it again.
25,000 cubic yards
Okay.
left, and ineligible debris is only 1,500, so I would agree it's minimal. And obviously, before I was here, there was a significant amount of cubic yardage. I would say almost double of that.
Double?
Yeah,
That was removed. So what's the
about
time
50,000
period?
maybe.
Do you
Since
think
July.
it's reasonable to expect Guam to remove 1,500 cubic yards that are remaining at Ypao Point in the next month by December 1?
I would say if the resources are there and not limiting, it should be. But, something that as, the Army Corps we're experiencing is the lack of resources available to move the debris out. So again, it's
All right,
very resource
you guys removed 25,000 cubic yards since May, which will be June, July, August, September, 4 months.
4 months, yes.
Done. All right, thank you. Thank you again for all your work, all of you. Situos Masi.
Thank you.
All right, we're looking again at further impediments that were listed and seeing what is the status of those. I'd like to invite and recognize Tamuning Mayor and the Vice Mayor. If you'd like to join us, you can have a seat if you have testimony, and if not, any time that you'd like to join in, you're welcome. All right, and so I'd like to confirm, so we did receive a letter from GWA, so for my colleagues, this is available to you. A very quick summary is really a list of the CIP projects that they have done to benefit the Guam Memorial Hospital up at its current location. 22.8 million Central Guam reservoirs, 10.6 million Route 4 relief, sewer line rehab and replacement, approximately 800 linear feet of sewer on Route 1, 5.2 in progress, 25.2 million. That was, completed 33.4 million total. In progress, 25.2 million, 5.2 million pressure zone realignment phase 1, 20 million Hagatnya main sewage pump station and force main. Construction pending is 142.5 million, 14.5 million pressure zone realignment phase 2, 36 million Central Guam reservoirs, 3 million Central Guam reservoirs, 69 million sewer pump station rehabilitation program, 20 million Hagatnya wastewater treatment plant planning and design phase. Preliminary planning estimated 36 million for an estimated 25 million Tumon number 2 reservoir, estimated 11 million water main rehabilitation replacement. These are what they believe benefits Oka Point, according to their testimony. The EPA was already, and Department of Ag is not here, but we've heard the testimony regarding the fire ants. Okay, so we do have other agencies and other non-governmental officials signed up to testify, so I'd like to welcome them. We have the Department of Land Management. Would you like to add? I do have a couple questions. Department of Land Management, if you'd like to testify, and I know this Chamorro Land Trust, please, and the Guam Memorial Hospital also wanted to testify, and then we have well, maybe I'll conclude with the government agencies, and then we've got several, so let me just make sure I recognize you all. It is are you both from GMH? Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, Chamorro Land Trust, I know this is your property and you were concerned about the revenue, of course. We are have to take that into consideration, but we also want to make sure, and you were concerned, or sorry, the former director was concerned about the debris as well. So I think it's very good news to hear about the debris cleanup, the progress. Would you like to add to that, Mr. Burge?
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. And Senators Kanata, Senators Duenas, Senator Fisher, Senator Lujan, and Senator Barnett. I am John Burge. I'm the Acting Administrative Director of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. And today marks my first day overseeing the CLTC, and I want to extend my apologies in advance if I'm unable to address all your inquiries. However, I assure you that we'll make every effort to follow up on your questions promptly and provide you with the necessary information. Yes, Madam Speaker, I am happy to hear the results of the cleanup from the various agencies before me. But I would also like to emphasize the significance of recognizing that the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority, our sole public hospital, is no longer suitable for long-term use and is in dire need of extensive repairs. According to U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the cost of repairing the current facility would far exceed the expenses associated with constructing a new hospital at a different location. In light of this assessment, the proposal for a new medical complex encompassing a hospital, healthcare agency facilities, and veterans care is a commendable initiative aimed at providing modernized healthcare services and strengthening Guam's public health system. The Department of Land Management and Governor Leon Guerrero have undertaken significant efforts to identify suitable land for the new medical complex. Throughout this process, factors such as size, location, proximity to utilities, development constraints, population density, traffic conditions, and road and arterial road accesses were meticulously considered. Public Law 3656, that's the Guam 21st Century Healthcare Center Act of 2021, was introduced by all 15 senators of the 36 Guam legislature. This law acknowledges the urgent need for new facilities for the Guam Memorial Hospital, the Department of Public Health and Social Services, and the Behavioral Health and Wellness Center. And according to Public Law 3656, these healthcare facilities have been in use for over 5 decades and are exhibiting signs of structural failure due to their age. Additionally, their structures do not comply with modern building codes, posing a liability to the staff, patients, and visitors. From what I read, the intent of the Guam legislature as outlined in Public Law 3656 was to provide the people of Guam with state-of-the-art healthcare facilities that would house all healthcare agencies within the Guam 21st Century Healthcare Center. The healthcare center would position Guam as the regional healthcare hub of Micronesia, fostering opportunities for medical training, tourism, and enhanced medical professional services throughout the entire region. Aside from the pandemic, which further underscored the need for improved healthcare facilities, there are no apparent reasons to deviate from the initial intent of the 36 Guam legislature. The property under discussion today, Ypao Point, also known as the Old Hospital Point, falls under the jurisdiction of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. Furthermore, Public Law 25179 granted the CLTC the authority to lease the property for commercial development, and the generated revenue earmarked for infrastructure programs. Former CLTC Administrative Director Alice Tyrone expressed opposition to relinquishing the land from the Commission. The CLTC's objective is to lease the land for commercial purposes to generate revenue for infrastructure construction at our various residential and agricultural properties. Moreover, the property in question is, to my knowledge, insufficient in size to accommodate the medical center. proposed by the 36th Guam legislature. Out of the original 53 acres, 9 acres have been reserved for the Katuran Chamorro Cultural Center, 5 acres or more for the Naftan Mananata, which is for the reinterment of ancestral remains, 1 acre for the Healing Heart Center, and a portion has been designated for a proposed foster home for children, with only approximately an estimated 25 to 27 usable acres remaining. And to what I understand, we would need to allocate several of these acres for easements, stormwater runoff, and seismic setbacks. So I thank you for your valuable time and consideration, and I urge you to support the governor's proposed acquisition of a property that is adequately sized to accommodate the Guam 21st Century Health Center. I feel this step will enable improved healthcare services and establish a stronger health system in Guam. Undunkluna Sususmasi.
Suzuosmasi, Director Birch. Are you also the director?
Yes.
Director for Guam Ancestral Lands Commission?
I have dual
Continue.
duties, collateral duties over at CLTC.
Okay, thank you. Director Borja, and if I could invite the representative from the Department of Ag to come and sit with us. Director Borja, please proceed.
My report, Madam Chair, is the same as it was in May, except for the events that happened, of course, which is a typhoon, and the addition of that particular kind of debris, the particular kind of waste. There is still 12 buildings in there that contain lead-based paint and contain asbestos tiles, to include the second Turan Chamorro buildings in that area. But other than that, my report remains the same, including the fire ants report that we got from the biosecurity section of the Department of Agriculture. And I do thank Senator Barnett for his interrogation of the Army Corps representative, establishing liabilities should little fire ants and or rhino beetles be transferred to the Manhita farms up in Chigo. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Director Borja. Mr. Kando, are you? Yeah. Please state your position for the record.
Yes, good evening, Speaker Terlaje and Senators of the 37th Guam Legislature. My name is William Kando. I'm the Assistant Administrator of Operations. To my right is Jeffrey Ventura, who is our Deputy Assistant Administrator of Operations. And to his right is Zaldi Tugati, the Guam Hospital Authority's Facilities Maintenance Manager, who is also a professional engineer, civil by trade. Thank you for this opportunity to have, and we apologize, Lillian Posadas, our hospital administrator, is on a leave of absence this week, so she wasn't able to join us. Thank you for this opportunity to have this discussion on one of the proposed sites for the new hospital, specifically Ypao Point. In as much as we agree with and support the fundamental intent and purpose of building a new hospital for the people of Guam, we do not support it being built at Ypao Point, as this proposed site has various concerns. One of those is spatial footprint concerns. The proposed Ypao Point site is, we believe it's approximately 17 acres of useful land that could be used to build the new hospital. And the existing GMH is currently located on lots totaling a similar amount of acreage, which is about 16 acres, which is well short of the amount of space required to build a modern hospital with a full array of services, capabilities, and capacities that we envision and are planning for in order to meet Guam's healthcare needs. We believe, as part of the concerns of the spatial footprint, it will not provide adequate sized parking structure that is required to protect the staff vehicles during tropical cyclones and keep them safe, the vehicles safe, them safe and secure, as well as the safety and security of patients, families, volunteers, and staff to come and go. GMH currently provides approximately 500 parking stalls, and we project our need to be approximately 1,000 parking stalls within a parking structure for the new hospital to accommodate patients and their families, volunteers and visitors, various types of students, UOG, GCC, high school students, contractors, and others that are coming and going to the existing hospital. They would still be coming and going to a new hospital as well. We believe there's not enough space for a new hospital, there's not enough space for a new hospital at that Ypao point. So clearly that would not be enough space to create a one-stop shop medical campus that benefits from shared wide array of health and medical services, supplies, equipment, capacities, and capabilities. Relative to geology concerns, every day the GMH on its cliff line, we are impacted negatively by the weather effects to GMH's infrastructure. That includes plant, property, and equipment. So this new hospital on Ypao Point, again, is going to be exposed to inclement weather just every day, not to mention during inclement weather of tropical cyclones, which is extreme weather. You've seen the evaluation of potential surface faulting. That this report was focused on GMH. It mentions a fault line that is running through Ypao Point, but that fault line was only mentioned in that report the impact on the existing GMH. That geological report had nothing to do with Ypao Point. So if you're going to have to, now you're going to have to study the geology of the existing Ypao Point. It would have to be done all over again to see if Ypao Point is even suitable geologically to build a new hospital. And I have no idea when that would be done or how long that would take. So applicability of that report is only to the existing GMH site. And then suitability, there's a question of suitability for building some, we kind of envision building a new hospital that could potentially take advantage of building some of its functions and aspects below ground. We do not believe that you would even have that ability at Ypao Point, because you have caves running underneath Ypao Point. We have no idea how deep those caves run under Ypao Point, so the possibility of building below ground, we do not believe exists. Whereas the other land that's being targeted in Manilao, we believe we would have that opportunity. Some of those aspects would include parking, plumbing, drainage, power lines, water lines, telecommunications lines, housekeeping and laundry, warehouse, facilities maintenance, auditorium, incident command center. These could all potentially be built slightly below ground. So we do not believe that you would have that opportunity at Ypao Point. But again, I guess the geological study, a new geological study, would, I guess, determine that. Thank you. That is my testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Cando. Do you have that in writing or not?
I do, ma'am.
Okay. I'd appreciate if I could pass that out to my colleagues. Thank you. Anyone else from GMH wanted to testify? Please turn on the microphone and identify yourself. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam. Good afternoon, Senators. I'm Saldi Tugari. I'm a civil engineer by profession, licensed and registered here in Guam. I've been with the GMH for, I guess, comparably for the longest time with William Cando here, almost more than 25 years. So in my experience, that if we're looking at Ypao Point compared to where we're at now at Oka, it's nothing different. It's in the same geological area that we're looking at. So we are in the cliffline area.
Sorry, can you just pull the microphone a little closer? And what kind of area? We're in what area?
What I'm trying to say, sir, Madam, is that the geography of Ypao Point for the Ypao Point and the Oka Point is just very much the same. So the way I look at it, it's going to have the same environmental conditions that it has to withstand. My problem with the facilities is that because it's too close to the cliff line, your wind is much more expressed and stronger compared to other areas of the island. So as you travel, because there's no barriers coming in, wind incoming from the ocean or the water, there's no impediment that would soften its impact to the facility. So if we're building there, it's going to be the same conditions that we need to withstand. Most of these environmental concerns has been pointed out by subject matter experts, the agencies, like all these invasive species and all that, all these things about environmental, that's been taken care of. They already expressed that. The area, if we know, is subject to salt spray 365 days. So for us to build there, the way I see it, in the engineering point of view, we need to follow the military grade specs. So that means more money. So I don't know how the economics is with that, comparatively building it in some other areas, because we haven't done so. But I would say, with the help of the legislature, that would be understandably taken into consideration. So everything else has been explained by my boss here, so that's all I could say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I appreciate your work there and your experience and your testimony. Department of Agriculture, please state your name and position for the record.
Sure. My name is Chris Rosario. I'm the state entomologist of the Guam Department of Agriculture Biosecurity Division. And I don't even know where to start with the site. So just start with the history. Okay, so back in 2014, I believe there was the Oka, or the Ypao Point was treated or was surveyed for little fire ants. And I believe since that time, that site was used as a green waste disposal site. Soon after Typhoon Dolphin, which is 2015, it was then used as a designated site as well for green waste. But over the years, that's really what it was mainly used for. And since then, little fire ant has been introduced. So the first time Guam Department of Ag came out to survey, and by the way, these surveys were conducted by the University of Guam at the time. So in 2021, Department of Ag was called to do a survey, to resurvey that area, and we found that not only it was used as a green waste dump site, but also for other debris as well, household trash. And so that likely, to me, in my opinion, that likely even might have spread little fire ant even more. So with the green waste debris still sitting at that site for many years, I'm sure already that has likely to spread in the adjacent properties. So we're looking at probably the whole site as largely infested with little fire ants. Again, I'm not here to oppose or support. I'm just giving my professional opinion. For treatment, it will take up to a year, maybe even close to 2 years, depending on. So, fire ants, they live in the vegetation. They are arboreal, so they live up in the trees. You get rid of those trees, depending on construction, whatever it may be. You get rid of the habitat, well, you essentially would get rid of the ants as well, along with treatment. So, two ways to get rid of fire ants in a site is sanitation and treatment. And considering if it's going to be, what's it called? It's going to be cleared out. If that forested area is going to be cleared out, then you could relatively get rid of the fire ants within 2 years. But we're still talking about a long-term treatment, a long-term monitoring period for little fire ants in the adjacent properties. And that's where in my professional opinion, it would essentially have to be a long-term monitoring project for controlling little fire ants. It's doable, but it does take a long period of time for that. So, yeah. And any other questions, feel free to ask. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I'm sorry, we had talked about fire ants earlier, so just I don't want to catch you off guard. I don't know if you heard that. Did you?
Oh, I'm sorry?
Did you hear what we discussed earlier about fire ants with the Army Corps?
Not necessarily, but
Okay.
but I have been part of the monitoring
Okay.
for the Army Corps of Engineers. I believe they also work with the ECC, who has done the mulching. Now, mind you, the raw green waste material that's been brought there did have little fire ants. So I've tested the raw green waste material, and it has been infested. But then after that stuff has been mulched and processed, then it's the pile has. I have not been able to test positive. Or not seen any tested positive samples. However, the structures, the concrete structures that are around that particular area are infested. So although the ants aren't on those piles anymore, but the structures that are still there, like I think there was near the mulch pile, there is just a concrete structure. I think it might have been for like one of those storage tanks or like an above ground storage tank there, and it had a concrete structure that was infested with little fire ants. Other than that, nothing else to say about the site. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Roberto. And thank you to the Department of Ag. I don't think they were here at our last hearing, so very helpful. And okay, just want to make sure. I know I think I had sent a query to Department of Ag as to fire ants, and because we had heard in the last hearing there were fire ants there, and we wouldn't be able to clean them up for 2 years. It would impede development. Has fire ants or Department of Ag ever stopped the development because of fire ants?
Stopped the development because of fire ants. Nope, not that I know of. No.
All right. Yeah. And you say the good news is it's treatable. You said you can, and you know where they are. You can treat them. And you've known about, not you maybe, but Department of Ag has known about this for years. Do they have any plan for this property?
Oh yeah, there was a plan already set in place. The moment that our team went out in 2021 October, the moment we found that there was little fire ants there, I've already had a plan set out for that.
To remove them?
To have it removed, to have it eradicated.
So what happened? Did they do it?
There was nothing.
Do you know
no
why?
Movement from there. Not that I know of.
Okay.
No.
All right. Yeah. I know this is Chamorro Land Trust property. They have been very concerned about this, and I'm sure they will follow up with you.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. And then we had Department of Land Management. Thank you again for all your testimony. I just wanted to clarify. So there seems to be a continuing different numbers. We're using your number that you gave us as to acres that are usable. It's about 25 acres. It's less than, that's what the number the governor used in her press release as well, that remain usable. We're not, Matrix estimated 35 acres remained usable, but Guam Memorial Hospital, you came up with a much lower number. You said 16 or 18 acres are still usable. And I just want to, I guess, I'd like to rely on Department of Land Management for that estimate, if that's okay with you, but do you have any reason why we shouldn't rely on his estimate?
The number that I was speaking of regarding the 17 acres, I believe I saw that indicated in the master plan for the development of the, as far as that particular site, Ypao Point. So, and maybe there's different, maybe it's indicating different acreages within that plan. So I did see it in that report. So that's what I stated.
Okay, and you're not talking about the medical complex master plan that was created by Matrix. You're talking about an older master plan?
I'm talking about the Guam Medical Campus Master Plan.
Okay, that's Matrix.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, they estimated 35 acres to be usable.
So if you look in that plan, you're going to see it mention also a 17 acres. So that's, and maybe there's, yeah, I would like to, if there's any confusion there, I would entertain that being eliminated.
All
That would
right,
be good.
I'll check it again. All right, thank you. And the GMH also talked about the geology of the site. Yeah, that's been brought to our attention. We received a map from Bureau of Statistics and Plans showing the geology of the area and the fault lines. And it actually, if I'm reading it right, looks like the fault lines, those did not impede any development of Jonestown, Parisville, the existing hospital, or any other development in that area. So I guess, yeah, we will have to consult with the experts on that. And you're saying that there was a study on the current hospital site, the geology. All
Yes.
right. I'm not familiar with that. Maybe if you could send that to me, I'd like to take a look at that too.
Well, that particular study, which was completed by URS Corporation, is on the websites, both the GITA website and also, I believe it's on one other website. But we forwarded that in the
Okay.
for that the development of the master plan. So that we were the ones, GMHA was the ones that contracted.
Yeah,
URS
for your
Corp-
current site.
And so it talks about the fault line running through Ypao
Yes.
Point and the potential impact on our current site.
Right.
But I'm not aware of any geological study that was done
I understand.
specifically for that
I
Ypao
understand.
Point, which I believe really, if
Yes.
Guam is seriously considering building a new hospital there, that should be completed. That should be done.
Right. I would expect that would be done on any site that was chosen, right? That's normally what they do. This plan to build underground, the only reason I want to ask you about it is because I didn't see that in the medical complex plan. They made a design, there's nothing in there about underground. They talked about how many floors it would be. They all seem to be above ground. Is this a new part of the design that you're going to try to incorporate in the new master plan?
That's correct. I mean, Team GMH, we've been doing our own internal design concept work, and so of course we're not at the design phase, but that doesn't mean we can't consider possibilities during doing our own design concept, thought process, and so that's some of the things that we've been stating as possibilities, because you will find those in other hospitals, around the world. They
Sure.
often do put
Sure.
these particular
All right, I just want to
functions
confirm, that's
underground.
not part of the existing plan for Atacao or Eagles Field or Ypao Point, right?
We are considering underground.
It wasn't part of the plan that Matrix put together for the hospital.
That's true, but that doesn't mean that it wouldn't be entertained when we enter into the design phase.
Okay. All right. And, okay, and I hear your concerns about wind, it's a cliff line, it's salt spray. I know that the intention was that it be built on a cliff line for the view, for the patients. They wanted the patients to have the same experience as the patients experienced at the Naval Hospital at the time. That was built on a cliff line, suffering probably the same risk of wind and salt spray. And so I know those are significant, and they should be considered if this is the site that is chosen. I agree. And Chamorro Land Trust, as I said earlier, I think we will need to address Chamorro Land Trust or ancestral lands independently. We have this hearing set for ancestral lands. I think I'm going to set one for Chamorro Land Trust because I do want to address their concerns. But I do want to note again that every property that was considered for the building of the hospital either belonged to Chamorro Land Trust or Guam Ancestral Lands Commission. That's the list that they gave us. Only one property was not belonging to Chamorro Land Trust or Ancestral Lands. That was conservation area at UOG. That's a cliff line again. Yes. But so we're going to be facing the same issues, it looks like, if we stick with one of their recommendations. It's Chamorro Land Trust wants to lease their properties out for cash if they're commercial properties, or they're supposed to use them for residential, right?
Right.
And so over the years, the legislature decided they were going to authorize them for commercial lease of that property instead of residential. And same thing with ancestral lands. They want, they're supposed to use their property for cash income to benefit those beneficiaries of the land bank. Yes. And so I don't know, I find them very similar issues that we are facing. And are we going to achieve some cash for ancestral lands for that property, or for Chamorro Land Trust on this property? Those are very significant issues to address. I agree. Thank you.
Thank
All right, Senator Lujan, any questions or comments for the panel?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, panel. It was said there was concern, of course, of the fault line and ocean spray and things of that nature. You know, I live in Jonestown, and I'm just wondering how those 4 towers were able then to be given the right to build. You have 2 towers that are 16 floors. You have 2 towers that are 19 floors. I'm sure the builders and the engineers considered the sprays. Oka Towers is there. The Riga Hotel is there. And if any tourist destination you go to that's built by the beach, the builders, the hotel owners will be very concerned about ocean sprays. They're built around the ocean. So at this point, I want to just, you know, JFK, it's ocean sprays, and we spend millions of dollars to build that place. So again, homes are going up in Jonestown, and there's no concern about the fault line. Again, there's those 4 towers that are right next to the hospital. As a matter of fact, a lot of the hospital employees use the frontage of that condominium there to park their cars. I don't think anyone is afraid that their cars may fall into a fault line there. I've lived there for 60 plus years. And so, again, all the hotels will be on the fault line. Those 4 towers that are on the fault line. How many floors do you anticipate the hospital to be? If it was built on the current, or on the, say, Ypao site, or the old hospital site? How many floors?
Could be 3, could be 4. We don't know yet because we haven't entered into the design phase.
Okay, so maximum 4 floors.
But relative to a fault line, we don't know the seismic, the geology of Ypao Point.
Okay.
There's no study that is focused on that.
What I'm basically saying, so those 4 towers.
We do know that a fault line is running through Ypao Point.
Those 4 towers should not have been built then over there.
I don't believe that you can compare a condominium to a hospital, in which we are trying to 24/7 providing healthcare services, life-saving services.
Mr. Kando and Senator, please, one at a time. Senator, you have the floor, and until you yield.
I'm comparing buildings. The codes to build will be basically the same. There are 19 floors, there's 16 floors, 4 floors. So if 4 floors will be probably in jeopardy of a fault line, that means a 16 and a 19th floor building that is relatively right there in the fault line as well will be in even bigger jeopardy.
Senator Lujan, if I may say?
Sure.
If I may respond? The building codes, the hospital-specific building codes are not the same as just a regular building. The electrical codes are not the same between a hospital.
The 19th and 16th floor buildings that we have up there, they're just regular codes then. Just regular codes. Any small contractor couldn't build that.
Specific to a condominium,
I
not
don't think so.
specific
I don't
to
think
a
so.
hospital.
You have to have certain licensing to be able to build certain heights. They're not just a regular. I don't think it's just Joe's contractor that built that condominium.
All I'm saying, Senator, is you're comparing apples to oranges.
No, I'm not. I'm comparing buildings. 4 floors are not right next to each other. We're 19 and 16, and so we're in jeopardy of salt spray with 4 floors, and we're not with 16 and 19. And the building codes are, no, it's just a condominium. Really?
I believe what Mr. Tagati...
You think the military would allow their folks to stay? Because most of those people living in those condominiums are military folks. You think if there was just, those codes wasn't really adhered to? It's just like a home, like a two-story home?
I'm sure they followed their codes. They wouldn't be the same. They're not going to be the same codes that we're going to follow.
We have very
They're going to be
strict
different.
codes. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. I don't buy the salt spray. Yes, it is, but everywhere. Where if you build a Miguel or Barragán, you got salt spray there as well. So, everywhere. In
I
Guam.
believe what the master plan was looking for was the most optimal site to build a modern hospital. That's why we were looking at different sites. And so that's why we went through advantages, disadvantages. What is the best site that we're going to build a new hospital for the people of Guam?
Okay, is it a hospital? Okay, or a medical center inclusive of a hospital?
We still believe that it's best that we build a medical center, a medical campus. We still believe that, so that we can interact, collaborate together. We should all do it on the same campus. We should be connected via one electronic health record. We transport patients between us and behavioral health all the time, and so including public health, and so close proximity is very important.
Mr. Gato, let me ask you this. If you believe, and say we believe, why is it not that GMH and the medical community are not on the same page? If there's a we believe, why are they not on the same page?
I will let them speak for themselves. I don't represent everyone.
But you're in a facility that have doctors. If you don't have doctors, you wouldn't be there. If you don't have doctors, you wouldn't be there. So I'm just saying, we, again, should be on the same page in these buildings. Do you guys not take the doctor's advice in consideration for these things?
Of course we do. As a matter of fact, when we do any of our designs, we rely on the end users, the clinicians, very closely.
And that's why they have, and that's why they have opposing views on where it's going to be?
Everyone is entitled to their opinion, and I respect that.
All the doctors, you got all the doctors saying it should still be there.
I don't agree with that. I don't believe it's all of 100% of the doctors. I know some doctors that do not agree with that.
Why are they not here?
You'd have to ask them. I don't know. We would have to have an oversight hearing on why the doctors didn't show up.
Okay. Well, anyway, again, like I said, I've lived in Jonestown, and I've seen these buildings go up, and I'm again, in regards to codes and fault lines and ocean sprays and things of that nature, and it's funny because my property value hasn't gone down. As a matter of fact, it's gone up. Thank you very much for those 4 towers. It just went up. The fault line and the sprays have not decreased my property value at all. Nobody up there. So anyway, that's it, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Madam Chair?
Senator,
If I may, I'd like to be able to provide the committee with the building and engineering plans for the four towers that Senator Lujan mentioned. We have that, of course, through the GLUC.
All right, you
And
can
also-
provide that.
yeah, and also provide the building and engineering plans for the large lattice stone down in Ypao. I mean, rather, Adelup, and probably the engineering plans for the Royal Palms apartment buildings there. I'm sure that might help the.
All right, thank you.
preliminary review.
Thank you, Director. Senator Kanata? Sorry, Senator Burnett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Oh, man. It'd just be much more productive if we could just discuss the status of Ypao Point without all of this political context. We got the director of Tremor Land Trust all of a sudden is a healthcare expert advising us on what is best for the healthcare. We got Mr. Cando from the hospital now is a geologist. Lanet, little fire ants, never stop construction. Salty air, never stop construction. And I just think it would just be so much more productive for us to just ask the questions and get the answers about Ypao Point without all the political interference. That's all, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Fisher?
Thank you. Mr. Kondo, do buildings designed for human residential occupation, do they have different standards than structures and buildings designed for public occupation, such as an airport or a hospital? Or maybe I should address the engineer, I don't know.
Yeah, I would prefer to defer to, maybe Zaldi can speak a little on that issue, because I know he's very familiar with the hospital building codes and standards.
I'm sorry, hospitals have a separate building code? A building code?
We have a separate set of codes. Yes, we do. And he can probably explain that a little better than I can.
Well, we don't really need to get into the details. I just wanted to know whether or not, we were talking about residential construction versus hospital construction, and I think you were, if I understand it, you were making the point that they have different standards of
Yes, just
need.
the electrical alone requires, I believe, 4 different electrical circuits, one for normal, one for emergency, one for equipment, and one for critical loads. Yeah.
Well, I have a house down in Epan. Does it have 4 circuits? It's residential.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
A neighborhood. Do the homes in the neighborhood require that sense of redundancy?
I'm not really familiar with residential codes. I'm more familiar with hospital, because I've been working there for 28 years with Zaldi. And Zaldi also is a civil engineer, and he is an expert in residential as well. So he knows the difference between residential and hospital.
Okay. Well, let me just throw it back to you then. Are there differences in the codes?
Yes, sir. There is some differences.
Okay.
So like what?
So while there are many similarities, there are differences.
There are similarities. Yes, of course, there are similarities. Like you mentioned earlier.
Okay. Thank
Tall
you.
buildings require structural engineers.
Okay.
Only structural engineers could design for the structural portion for hospitals and schools.
Okay. Let me wait for them to settle down in the back, and then we can continue.
Okay.
Okay. I'm just waiting for them to finish their conversation. Ma'am, could we get order in the House? Okay. Looks like they were able to finish. There came an issue about why the GMH is here, and the question of how many doctors do or do not support the construction of the hospital at Ypao Point. And a question arose, well, as you said, sir, that there are doctors who oppose it, and the question arose, well, where are they? I can't answer that either, but I would suggest, and do you agree that they may have a different agenda? The doctors community have invested millions in building private clinics in the vicinity of the Guam Memorial Hospital. And now if the hospital gets up and moves away, they're going to have to chase after it, and they're going to lose their investment or part of their investment. And that might be, it might be self-interest that they want the new hospital constructed so they don't lose money. Is that a possibility?
I would suppose that is possible.
Okay, yeah, yes, I think that's probable. As I'm hearing from you, and this is a real concern, especially since I see the mayor of the impacted community here. We know from the numbers that the hospital community, which is anticipated by the 21st Century Guam Healthcare Act, will require a footprint of around 100 to 107 acres. That's the material in front of me proposes that. Yet, Ypao Point does not contain 107 acres. So if we go with Ypao Point, we have a dilemma. We will either go to Plan B and get rid of much of what we need in the hospital and just build a stopgap measure, frankly, a small hospital, and we won't have the clinics and so forth that are necessary and adjacent to the hospital. We won't have those. But, I mean, that'll be a necessity because we've decided to build on a smaller footprint, and we'll have to change the law, of course. But the other alternative is if we go with Ypao Point and we decide that we are going to continue to follow the 21st Century Health Plan, which 15 senators introduced, of course, and passed, the governor passed it, then we will have to look elsewhere. And because this law is going to require the construction in Tamuning, we're going to have to look elsewhere, which means necessarily we're going to have to condemn private and residential property. We're going to have to exercise eminent domain, and we're going to have to start taking people's homes and businesses away from them, and, you know, fair market value and, you know, 10 years of litigation down the road. That, depending on how we move forward, could be a real possibility. So my question is, has GMH or any of you folks started considering the possibility of which businesses and which homes you would need to condemn?
I wouldn't say GMH, maybe not GMH, but I would say that the overall task force for the medical campus, that's a consideration that they've probably been talking about, but I was not privy to that discussion.
Okay, I mean, because it's math, we can go one way or another. We can either reduce the size of the hospital, or we can, because there is an act right now to force the hospital to be built in the village of Tamuning, we're going to have a choice. I mean, math is math. Physics are physics. Two buildings can't occupy at the same place at the same time. So we'll have to make a choice. Either we're going to limit the health care we will provide going forward, or we're going to have to condemn private property in Tamuning. And I find that the possibility of condemning private property, either commercial or residential, is not acceptable. Simply not acceptable. We're not going to take people's homes from them, even for fair market value. I just couldn't abide by that. So, and that's why I was asking whether or not you guys have considered that possibility, as awful as it is. That seems to leave us with one possibility, which is the Atacao area. It's 107 acres. It's got plenty of laydown space. It's easily developed. It's away from, and with respect to my brother Jesse here, I live in Ypao, and you can just watch your metal objects just rust away. I mean, you can practically, it's just amazing. But that's the environment. That's the environment. You have to accept that, and you have to expect that. So all I heard was we may be in an earthquake zone up at Ypao Point. It's too small. The weather's horrible, and it has a fire ant infestation. And we're also faced with the possibility of taking people's homes from them and their businesses from them if we go that way, and it's just unacceptable. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Duenas.
CJ's Bonsi, Madam Chair. Thank you to the panel and thank you to everyone that's here. In respect of everyone's time, I'm not going to find 500 ways to ask the same question. Madam Chair, I'm just going to make a couple of comments. It's apparent that the government currently represented has objections to Ypao Point. So in order to facilitate moving forward, I think it's important, hopefully we're getting to the next panel, for all of these individuals who actually might have to leave here to save lives at some point, that we hear a balanced perspective. I respect the government's position, don't get me wrong. I think I have different point of view. I wanted to finish this statement, Madam Chair, by saying there is nothing that anticipates that the Guam Memorial Hospital footprint will not still remain in the inventory of the government of Guam. And in the event that Ypao Point is selected and the new hospital is built down there, we will still have possession of the 17 plus acres that exist with the current Guam Memorial Hospital, which can be repurposed for this vision if it continues going forward into the 21st medical complex. To mention that the mental health building, which is the newest building, I believe, in the inventory of the government of Guam's facilities, is co-located there. So you already have, within that same footprint, your two major facilities in terms of the complex. So I think that we need to continue to keep that in mind. There is no forfeiture of that property that's contemplated if we were to move to Oka Point to build the new hospital and whatever else may fit on that location. And so the current GMH plant and all of its facilities and property, no bill presented to the legislature thus far has contemplated selling, leasing, gifting, or doing anything else with that property. So I think even if the vision were to be contemplated, it would still be intact with the accumulation of both properties. That would be the extent I'm looking forward to, because it's under the title of, but I'll wait until they read their testimony, the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority of Office of the President of the Medical Staff. I think it may not be in concert with the current representation from Guam. In fact, it's not in concert. They are in full support of Ypao Point. So it's going to be an interesting testimony. But with that, Madam Chair, I don't think that any of us here, whether we're on one side or the other with this panel, are going to convince a change of heart or a change of mind in terms of what the contemplated plan going forward. So I look forward to listening to those who have taken the time out of their busy schedule, namely doctors and others, to be able to come up to the panel. But of course, that's your chairmanship. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Dueñas. I appreciate that, and I concur. And I want to just clarify also the record that there was no mention at all in the medical complex plan created by Matrix. There's no mention of the word fault, seismic, geological, or geologic. I don't think that those considerations were made yet for any property. Neither was there consideration for condemnation, although they do cite that for building at Eagles Field, they would have had to, and that Atacao is similar to Eagles Field, they would create 6-lane highway or 6-lane road, and they do not indicate the cost of condemnation of property for that or how they would achieve that. They also indicated again that the total medical campus is what they need in square feet is 1,608,000 square feet. And if we laid that out on one floor, it would still fit on Ypao without the independent care, the independent assisted living center being placed there. So if we excluded the independent living from the medical complex and we just put down their plans for a hospital, behavioral health, and public health, it might still fit. But, of course, with 21 acres, it would take just the hospital alone, 21 acres of single story, or they build up, like their current plans are under this medical plan is to build 3 or 4 stories. They never mention building down, they never mention condemning for the roads or anything, and I just don't want to compare other things other than what they have talked about. The site that, the size of a hospital they need, and the components that they've already discussed. So they've discussed 3 or 4 levels of the hospital, 3 or 4 stories, 3 or 4 floors. All right, thank you. Again, so thank you to all of you, and thank you for your offer of additional information, directors, and thank you, directors, all of you, and for your assistance in this. Sizus Masi. Well, now, except we still have signed up to testify. Maybe we'll just try and see if we can fit. Anyone else who signed up to testify, please come and have a seat. All right. Thank you. Okay, so we'll proceed in the middle. If you could introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name is Dr. Jonathan Thorpe. I'm an internal medicine physician and the medical director for the Guam Seventh-day Adventist Clinic. And it's, thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak today. I want to share just a little bit of a personal perspective before moving to Guam. I've mentioned in prior testimonies unrelated to this topic that I worked in the country of Nepal as a chief operating officer for a mission hospital. And I have to smile at a couple of facts. One is that we had water pouring through our roofs, and we had snakes coming through our roofs. And this was in one of the poorest countries in the world. And Madam Speaker and Senators, I have to say I'm a little appalled that when I see pictures of the conditions my colleagues are working in at the current facility, water pours through the roof and snakes come through the ceiling. I have to smile because here we are, the wealthiest country in the world, and it's really shameful that we have a facility that is this poorly operated and run down to the point where my colleagues and my patients are having to work and function. And so the appeal of my story is that we need to move forward with the decision to move a hospital and build a hospital quickly, not wait for years and years of back and forth between party sidelines to make a point. Patients are dying because they don't have access to care. And that brings me to several points, and I'll just briefly mention each one. First, I have to smile at the conversation that I've heard this afternoon on the whole topic of size. As an alumnus of Loma Linda University Medical School, which has had a long relationship with the territory of Guam and has many physicians have worked here, I just pulled up on Google Maps and I mapped out the surface area of the campus. If you take the entire core campus of the medical center, including a large acreage for parking, it's 65 acres. If you look at the core area where there's the three hospitals and the faculty medical offices with a huge parking garage, you're looking at about 35 acres. If you look at the core area for just the actual hospital, the pediatric hospital, the old hospital that is being repurposed into research area and administrative spaces, and the new hospital, you're looking at about 21 acres. And so this argument that I hear that there's not enough space at Ypao Point, I smile at, because we, as now a resident here on the island of Guam for 2.5 to 3 years, I recognize that property value is incredibly high. And you can't build on water, you can only build on solid ground. And so it only makes sense to me to go up, not out. Go up, not out. And so I just appeal to us, again, to move forward with the decision And I'd like to make the point out that there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of buildings around the Pacific Rim built on fault lines. Engineers have had an incredible technologies to build with buildings that can actually move with earthquakes across fault lines, and they don't fall down, including hospitals. And so this argument from a lay person's perspective, not an engineer's perspective, but a physician's perspective, it's hubris. It doesn't make any sense at all. And so I would like to just make the point that, again, that engineers are very capable of building across fault lines. Thirdly, is that when I look at the existing healthcare facilities in Guam, one of the key areas is mental health. And there's a huge paucity of mental health practitioners and services here. We don't have unlimited funding. We're running out of time on the funding that, from my understanding, that the feds have put in through the COVID-related emergency funding. And if we don't move quickly, we lose that funding. So why are we going to replicate and build new buildings where we already have existing buildings that would work very well? Case in point, the behavioral health services. We have a good facility there. There's room for expansion there. Why do we need to expand it out? The adjacent nature of the behavioral health to either the Ypao Point or the existing facility is not too far to transport a patient. Again, I hearken back to my days at Loma Linda. We'd had surgical centers down the road. We had other hospitals down the road. We transferred patients back and forth very easily, and there's medical transport teams that are very capable of moving patients between buildings. And on that point, I would make the point that you have the existing Guam Memorial Hospital facility that would not necessarily need to be completely condemned, but would work very well for a public health facility and a CDC-operated lab. So again, why are we spending limited dollars that eventually have to come out of our pockets as taxpayers to build this massive campus where we're replicating and duplicating buildings and structures that we already have in point? And lastly, I'm going to make the point from a patient's perspective. Yesterday, I had a Manonko that came in that was in her 8th decade of life. Short of breath, very difficult breathing. She'd come to the primary care office, which is where patients should have their medical home. And we saw her and assessed her, and here she had driven in quite a distance to come in, and it was very rapidly apparent that she needed emergency services. And so with this whole argument of, well, the doctors are saying it for selfish purposes, is again hubris, because these non-governmental services are very, very valuable to the healthcare delivery of the community. They're already existing in Tamuning. Patients have their trust in these services, and they are coming to these different offices in the core of either Tumon or Tamuning for it. And so here they come from home to seek their care, to receive their care, and then we're going to transfer them by 30 minutes across the island to a new facility. That doesn't make sense to me at all. The hospital needs to be adjacent to the existing medical infrastructure of the community so that we can work in a private-public partnership in order to deliver care that is safe and effective and affordable to patients. I think that concludes my main points. I just reiterate again the point that we are living in the wealthiest country in the world. We should not have water pouring through our roofs and snakes coming through our roofs in the hospitals where we deliver our care.
Merci, Doctor.
Thank you.
Is the PowerPoint ready for Dr. Shea? Is it ready? Yes, okay, it's ready to go. Go ahead, Dr. Shea.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and fellow senators here. I wish Mr. Fisher was still here, because I think
Sorry, just state your name for the record.
Dr. Thomas Shea. I'm the department chair for the Obstetric and Gynecology Department of Guam Memorial Hospital, and I'm the current chair. And I would speak on the majority of the OBGYNs there, and also the president of the Guam Medical Association. Again, I'm going to go through these slides real quick. And basically, it's not slides that I've created. It's just basically some $6 million worth of research that's in this pamphlet in Matrix. So that's basically what I wanted to go through. I'm not sure if everyone has read it, but I just want to bring out a few points on this. So next slide. Again, this is the seal of the government that authorized this Matrix study that we probably shouldn't ignore, but kind of look into it a little bit more. Next slide. Now, in the Matrix study, they looked at building not just the hospital, but the entire campus. And when I look at that, and right away I tell myself, man, that is a lot for Guam to swallow. What is the most urgent item on this entire list is the medical center. And that is the most urgent aspect of it. I don't think we can afford to build the entire campus. Next slide. Now, today we're talking about potential sites. We're talking about Ypao. Let's take a look at these potential sites that they take a look in the matrix. They basically look at over 10 sites, and they isolated 3 top sites. Eagles Field, next slide. Eagles Field, Adalcao, and Ypao Point. Now, when they look at these 3 sites, I'm sure they didn't just randomly select them. I think they looked at the $6 million worth that we invested into this study. Now, let's take a look at a little bit of this choices here. The top 3 sites, right? They look at, next slide. They look at, I'm sorry, that's kind of small there, but it's in the matrix, table 2.2. I want to point out section 5, 6, 8, and 10. Probably the 4 most important part of their consideration here. Density of population, and we heard the governor from Guadalupe issue a press release saying that don't build a hospital for doctors. Okay, fine. Let's build it for patients. I agree, let's build it for patients. The matrix study that we invested $6 million in have isolated majority densities in Tamuning for the population, including travel distance, emergency response time, distance from clinic to the hospital. Next slide. Now, comparing Ypao, Adalcao, and Eagles Field. Eagles Field is out of the play. The next highest ranked, according to the matrix study, is Ypao Point. And that's according to the $6 million investment. I'm going to stop saying $6 million. That's kind of redundant there. But we know how much we invested in that. So we're not going to take this matrix study lightly. We're going to look at it. Look at number 5, population density. It rated Ypao Point and Adalcao equal. But later on, I will show you, if you read more into their mapping, Ypao Point will come out way ahead of Adalcao. Travel distance. Look at the travel distance. This is not for doctors' travel. This is probably for patients. Access to care. Number 3, which is the highest point that they can get. Matrix has ranked Ypao Point number 3, which is the top access for patients. Number 1 is the lowest, which is Adalcao. That is the lowest access for patients. So when Guadalupe is saying, let's build it for patients, that's Ypao Point. They need to be focused on. And that's based on this matrix study. Now, when you look at emergency response time, it's equal across the board. Eagles Field, Adalcao, and Ypao. But then I would disagree with that part because I think Ypao emergency response time is much faster. Not just for doctors, but for patients as well. Now, when you look at number 9, proximity of arterial roads, Ypao Point ranked above Adalcao as well for proximity for the arterial roads. Distance from clinic and hospital. That may not be important to Mr. Fisher, the senator, who just commented about the investment of clinics within Tamuning. But I'm going to explain that a little bit more later on, that proximity to clinic and hospital, to the hospital, saves lives. It's not about money, it's about saving lives. And that's what we want to focus on today. Now, 15, look like construction costs. Is ranked Ypao Point. Construction cost is better. It's better than Adalcao. Land use and zoning compatibility. Number 1 is Ypao Point. Number 1. So the total score is actually higher, much higher than Adalcao partial. So when the Guadalupe issuing press releases, I don't think they read their own report that they invested $6 million in. I'm very shocked and surprised about that. What a waste of money if you're not going to pay attention to it. Next slide. Now, the drive time analysis, and I'm glad that a speaker had brought this up before, because when you look at the details of the drive time analysis, it's important to note, when you look at the drive time analysis, it talks about death and serious injuries, okay? The optimal time to get a patient or access to the hospital is 10 minutes. 20 minutes, okay. 30 minutes, acceptable. Once you get past 30 minutes, the outcome is not desirable, which means death and morbidity will increase. So when you look at this, look at Ypao Point. Look at the matrix study. I didn't create this study. It's actually a beautiful study when you read it, because it favors Ypao Point by a wide margin. Next slide. When you look at this map right here, pay attention to how they map this out. And many of us may just read it. I've been studying this. And look at 0 to 10 minutes. You got almost 36,000 population of patients that have direct access within 10 minutes. If you have a heart attack, you're in labor, you're bleeding, trauma, you're going to need access. You got 36,000 in that population there. Now, even when you go 20 minutes, Ypao Point is still higher. Next slide. When you look at this next one, this is talking about Adalcal, which is what Guadalupe is focusing on. And they're saying we're going to build this out there because it's better for patient access. No, it's not, according to that $6 million study. Read it. 10 minutes. It's only 13,000 people that's accessible at 8% of the population. Even when you go to 20 minutes, look how big the blue map they have to draw out to include 92,000 population. Ypao Point is still higher for accessible to the population, according to this study. Next slide. Now, here is the thing that's concerning about Adalcal land partial that they didn't read. Well, you know, I don't know if I'll read this, but just read it. Costly development constraints, longer travel distance, sizable cost of extending and expanding utilities. The site was incompatible with existing land use and current zoning. You're going to have to do that. That's going to have significant disruption during development. The drive time analysis of Adalcal in 2-.4, I already talked about that, is that the land part is way worse than Ypao, way worse. So, you know, if we talk about access for patients, it's not for doctors. Patient needs to get to the hospital. Now, this is the next slide, is actually quite important slide because table 2.5, I've isolated this, okay? Look at Eagles Field, that's out. But if you look at Ypao Point, there's no cost to the land where you have to spend money to buy the land, the crown land, Adalcal, which belongs to the ancestral land. Now, when you look at the level and the building, it's pretty good, Ypao, because we've built there before. If you look at secondary access, there is no secondary access to Adalcal or even Eagles Field. But we have secondary access to Ypao. It's already there. Look at on-site utility. There are some on-site at Ypao. There's none at Adalcal, even Eagles Field. Now, if you look at the other one, water infrastructure, wastewater, power infrastructure, road transportation, each of those costs over an average over $20 million to each, over 100-something million just to include those. $5 million to upgrade on Ypao Point. That is a significant amount of money that you can save. That can go to medication and supplies to save lives. I'm almost done. Now, telecommunication. Somebody mentioned telecommunication. It's better. I think William Kando mentioned that, oh, you have to build this big campus because we want to collaborate with, who are you going to collaborate? The only people that can collaborate is Gov Guam themselves. They're not going to collaborate with the community of private doctors. That most of the private doctors actually help save lives at the hospital, okay? So when he's saying, oh, we have to have the EHR that communicates in the same, no, it doesn't. I can communicate with Hawaii, Kapilani with my EHR. I can communicate with San Francisco, UCLA in my EHR. So what they're telling you is not the truth, okay? You don't need a whole campus to be able to communicate and collaborate. Now, if you look at sentiments of doctors and medical community, I didn't get a survey, so I have no part in this study at all. But look at what the matrix says. Negative for Adalcal, negative for Eagles Field, positive for Ypao Point. And I wasn't even including this survey. Now, if you look at community support and perception for Ypao, it's supportive. The other one, neutral. So this is a study that we pay money for. Now, just to go back to the footprint, and I think you mentioned, next slide. It's important to recognize that we have apples compared to apples and apples, right? That's what Kanda wants to talk about. Look at this slide right here. This is Straub Medical Center in Honolulu, Hawaii. That's the hospital I go to when I have to have my physical done. Now, take a look at this now. They're building almost 1 million square foot of space within their own footprint of less than 5 acres. Oh my goodness. I have no idea. If you keep talking to Gov Guam, they're never going to build anything. But look at Queens Medical Center. They're expanding the bed. Next slide. Queens Medical Center is expanding to 720 beds on the same footprint in Honolulu. Next slide. Kapilani Medical Center. That building right there is already up. That is the Children's Medical Center. So needed for Guam. And Kapilani has built it on the same footprint. They didn't go out and buy land. They didn't do anything. They built it in the same footprint. So I would challenge Gov Guam to also look at GRMC. Next slide. GRMC is built in less than 8 acres of land. 8 acres of land. Take a look at that. It's right down the road. Consult with GRMC and ask them how did you build this in less than 8 acres of land? And they have room to expand. So, the government of Guam really needs to take a look. When they talk about collaborativity, look at the private sector and what we're doing. Okay? And then to answer the question, Mr. Fisher, I know he keep leading on Mr. Candle, right? The way he asked questions. He didn't ask questions. He basically asked questions and answered himself. Basically, what he's saying is this. He just said, well, it's because, maybe those doctors that support if not here, or those doctors who support it have invested in the Tamuning, the medical complex near the hospital, then they're going to be chasing the new hospital. Well, partially he's correct, but on the other hand, if you really think about it, even if you start building a hospital right now, if you build in Acalcal, I bet you it won't even be built within the next 8 years. Majority of us, what we're going to do at our clinic, we can do surgery centers, right? Guam Surgery Center is operating right now. Most of the major surgeons have to respond within 10, 15 minutes of trauma at the hospital. OBGYNs, who I represent in my group as a chair of the department, 100% of us has got to respond within 10 to 15 minutes to emergency. And when a woman is in labor, when they bleed, they can die within 10 minutes if you don't get there to stop that bleeding. So who's going to take care of this patient? Not Mr. Candle. He's not a doctor. He's not going to be there and take care of it. So I wish Mr. Fisher were here so I can answer more of his questions. The other thing that I'm so dumbfounded is this. When they talk about cliff line, oh, wow, we don't want salt spray. Senator Lujan said it right. There's salt spray all over the island. I have a car parked in the middle of the island, and I park in my friend's house, and I say, hey, there's no salt spray here. The next thing you know, there's rust all over my car. I'm like, what happened? It's not a cliff line. It's all rusted up. And it's in the middle of Manila right now. So it doesn't matter where we are in the entire island. I think what we need to be concerned about is when are we going to build this hospital? If you keep having the same Gov Guam people here that say we can't, we don't want, we can't, we don't want, we're never going to build it. We're never going to build it. Just like labor and delivery is never done. And it's 6 years, going on 6 years in this administration, that they promised to get it done and still not done. And it's going to be another 6 years before you build a new hospital. But I can tell you this, senators, if you want to build a hospital within the next 3 to 4 years, Ypao Point is your land to build it on. Because that is the only land that I can see that can build a hospital as fast as it can. Not at Dawkao. If you want to do ecological study, I'm not an ecologist. I'm not a geologist like Mr. Candle thinks he is. You would still have to do a geological study in Dawkao. And let me tell you, read the matrix study because it talked about sinkholes. And under Dawkao, it says questionable sinkholes. So you haven't even dig there, and they're already telling you there's maybe sinkholes. So you may have 100 acres, but 50 of them may be in the sinkholes. All right? Anyway, next slide. Anyway, I just want to thank Matrix Consultant for the $6 million study, because I think it's a wonderful study and supports Ypao Point as the second choice to Eagles Field. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Shea. Please proceed.
Hi, half a day. My name is Denise Tyson-Ritter. I am a family medicine physician at American Medical Center, and I, along with my colleagues on this platform and other people here, support the build of a potential hospital at Ypao Point. When we think about a location of this building, we have to think about its function, and its function is to serve its people. And so, just like Dr. Thorpe had mentioned, we have more often than we'd like to see our patients coming in with pretty concerning symptoms, right? Concerning for heart attack, stroke, respiratory distress coming to clinic. They need emergent transport. The time it takes to transport from point A to point B is vital because time is tissue. And so that is incredibly important to have a site with accessibility, with routes, multiple routes where you can access. In addition to that, how quickly can your specialists get to that site? Our OBGYNs, our cardiologists, our radiologists, how quickly can they get to where they need to be to save lives, right? So our specialists are located in close proximity to the hospital for this reason. And so using Ypao Point takes advantage of the infrastructure already in place. And so, again, this hit pretty close to home when my mom suffered a heart attack days before Mawar hit. And so, you can imagine my shock when I received her text while I'm in clinic saying, man, I have chest pain. And I call in a panic. I said, don't you come here to clinic. I said, go straight to the emergency room. I had a family member who had enough sense to take her to the nearest fire station and transported her to GMH. And so I rushed to GMH from Tumon Clinic in what seemed like hours, eternities, but it was minutes. Just wondering if I was too late. She had the best possible outcome. She was stabilized in the emergency room. Cardiologist saw her, and eventually she was stented. But it's because these things are in place. The infrastructure is what it is because it makes sense for our people. And so having Ypao Point as the location allows for multiple access points to get to the hospital, whether it be multiple, vehicle collision, inclement weather, road construction, we can still access that spot. Additionally, our specialists are there. They will be there in minutes notice because minutes matter when we think about heart attacks and strokes. You're going to want your specialist to be there as soon as possible. That's it.
Thank you very much. Doctor, Doctor, can I confirm your name is Denise Taitano-Ritter? That's you. Thank you. AMC Clinic. All right, thank you very much. Dr. Wen.
Hi, good afternoon. It's a very interesting afternoon. But again, my name is Huang Nguyen, and I'm not going to say much because I'm here just as a primary care physician and a principal partner, probably the largest primary care clinic in Guam. For the record, I am myself and the majority of AMC providers do not have any admission to GMH. So we provide primary care service to about 35 to 40% of the Guam population. It's a huge clinic. And I will concentrate on just one subject today, which is the new hospital and the location. We talk about a new hospital versus a new medical complex. It's a totally different discussion that you don't want to hear from me because it's going to take me the whole day to say things. But one advice to the governor and the senator is that from my healthcare point of view, what it was is we only need a new right-size hospital and not a medical complex. As Dr. Shea and the rest of my colleagues say, with the status of GMH, we cannot keep beating this bush and want a medical complex. It would absolutely make no sense. We need to build a new hospital of right size, not 300, 400, 600 beds. We have no staff to take care of that. Right size means probably about 150 beds is the max because we don't have nursing staff to run it. Again, I kind of disappointed the administration say about the physician, and we talk about this location because it's selfish for the physician to do, and we don't take care of our medical provider. The administration have to understand that GMH is for acute care service and not by any means provide the primary care service that we as a clinic does. It's an acute care service. The acute care service should be close to the majority of the primary care clinic and the ancillary service, like the surgeon center, the radiology center, the special center, as the center augment the care, the acute care service. But acute care service cannot be so far away, and they don't provide primary care service. It's a big difference. So once you want to build all the way on Annandale, it's not a chronic care service. That's us. It's for primary care. That's not the hospital. So you got to understand the difference of acute care and primary care service in choosing your location of the hospital. That's our business. And just like Dr. says, I'm not sure who they consult for physician to provide this this location in Manila, but I don't think that any physician would step up and say, yes, they talk to me. We ask around and nobody say that they talk to anyone. So I'm not sure who the physician are that they're talking to. You know, for GMH to be so far away, and we stretch about 10 minutes away from the center, is really detrimental to the patient care due to the delay in the response time as a transport of the critical patient from the center to the hospital, and for the physician to travel to the hospital when needed, especially, you know, if I used to be on call for the hospital, and for me to travel from my clinic, AMC Tuman, to the hospital is 10 minutes. For me to go from AMC Tuman to Manila, I don't care how much little traffic, it's going to take me 20, 30 minutes to get there. And by that time, my patient will be in trouble already. So the location and the time for travel is very important. All three major clinics, and again, the ancillary service like GRC, MDX, Surgeon Center, every one of them, including the former Burton Center, are within 5 to 10 minutes to the current GMH. Ypao, the same thing, less than 5-10 minutes. And I can tell you, in anything that I can argue with, I can sit here and debate this with the government if they want anytime. You can tell the patient that call on your line, say, I have chest pain, shortness of breath. You can tell them to go to the ER. Please don't go to the clinic. 90% of the time more, they will show up in your clinic. They don't like to go to the emergency room. That's reality. You know, so they need to be somewhat very close to where the hospital is. You know, AMC Manila is the only medical center close to the current new proposal that they want in Manila. We are the only one. So Manila site, we own that. We still speak against it because we are the only one out there, but it's selfish for us to say that's the best location for Manila when it's going to be detrimental to people of Guam. AMC Manila cannot be doing that. It's better advantage for me, but for my patient and for the rest of the population of Guam, it's not good. So again, you know, Senator Fisher, just like I get insult when he say that, you know, for our best benefit, because it's advantage to us because we want to move our clinic. Senator Fisher, I have 2 clinics, one in Tuman, one in Oka, okay, and one in Manila. Manila is the biggest one for us. I speak against it, not because it's advantage to me for anything about financial-wise, but because for the patient care. So we are here for patient care. So please, you know, consider, I really, really speak for myself, for my colleague, and my patient. We shouldn't have a choice. Ypao is the only choice. Or somewhere in Tamuning, just pick one where the access to care for majority patient is the key for survival. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Wen. Again, thank you to all of you who've appeared today. Are there any questions from senators for this panel? Senator Duenas.
No question, Madam Chair, but I think I just needed to clean one thing up. I did notice that in our packet there was the testimony on the May 17th to where the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority, Office of the President of Medical Staff, strongly in support of Ypao Point. I just wanted to close with a comment. I mean, in your profession, Madam Chair, in the legal profession, a lot of times it's called asked and answered. I think all the questions have been asked and the answer is Ypao Point is the place. I also want to join with you doctors in saying that I have a lot of difficulty because my wife is a critical care nurse, so I know a lot of what takes place. And I do know, and also I think it's kind of not even hard for people on Guam. When you drive past a dialysis center, a lot of times you'll see an ambulance outside. I used to wonder sometimes and shake my head, even next to the hospital. I live close there too, and you see an ambulance in front of the Perrisville Clinic going up to the hospital. Because like Dr. Wen and all the doctors are saying, the majority of the time when an individual ends up in crisis, especially on Guam, our healthcare is not going to change for a long time in terms of the acute situation with a lot of our people. And where they're probably going to get their life-saving transport is going to be from a clinic to the hospital. And so the bottom line is to implicate whatsoever that there's any type of financial interest. I would say I'll flip the script. It may be the other way. Because who will benefit from having to be at the doorstep of the foundation of trying to transform what it's going to look like? Every single one of you have invested your time, your education, your love for Guam to stay here and to try to treat and save our population. So I'm going to remain invested in your integrity and in why you come before us today to plead that this is the best. Dr. Shea, I have to admit and confess that I perused the report from Matrix, but you've basically given us a clinic today that we could use your PowerPoint to
yeah, please do, because that you have it saved. Look at it, meet in your caucus, and Senator Barnett, you can use that for your bill, and by all means. I have more to say, but I had to cut it short out of respect for time. I didn't want to get cut off, but I think it's important to look at the study. We invested $6 million in that study, and that study tells us Ypao Point is good for the hospital. It's good for the hospital. And no disrespect to Guam Memorial Hospital, their staff, if they're taking marching orders to go against this, but they have to think about patients. They're not there to take care of patients, we are. We're there seeing blood. We have blood in our hands every day, saving lives. So they need to at least give us some respect and hear us out and look at their own $6 million study. Like Kendall mentioned about this cliff line, somebody better call the Admiral and say they better tear down Naval Hospital because they're on a cliff line too. And I work there. Yeah, they seem to be doing okay. They're not going to build another hospital. So yeah, use my PowerPoint, and I'm open for discussions. You have my number. And if you want me to call me into your meetings, it's fine too. We have more time. Thank you.
Yeah, that certainly is. I mean, to point out, I mean, I saw a number of different points in there, but the forensics that you did on that in terms of, you're absolutely right. Everything drives it. Our own report that we purchased, and, I think we should use that as the foundation to verify. Madam Chair, I won't go beyond those points, but I want to thank you very much once again, and thank you for everything you do every day. And I think as a body, we need to pound home every single time that everything you're talking about is saving lives and patient care. And I'm going to support the fact that that's why you continue to come forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Duenas. Senator Barnett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank the panel for coming out to testify. I think overall today this hearing was very encouraging as we started the hearing with news from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers at the Ypao Point site, which was called a environmental and ecological catastrophe just a few months ago, has been, pretty much entirely cleaned up. And I thank you, Dr. Shea, for going through that $6 million study report and picking out the important facts. And I think that the facts support Ypao Point as a site for a new hospital. And I think even considering testimony tonight about we're not losing the Guam Memorial Hospital footprint. So I think that at the end of the day, if we do decide on a complex, that it would fit in Ypao Point. I think a lot of the disagreement has come because the site selection for the new hospital and/or medical complex was really, in my opinion, decided upon based on personal preference of the governor. And the administration has tried to twist the facts to fit the governor's feelings about first Eagles Field and now Atacao, but I think the facts fit perfectly relative to Ypao Point as the $6 million matrix study shows. So thank you again for your testimony and providing a little bit more sensibility of the, like I said, we started good, ended on a good note, and I think that really I don't want to say the belligerent attitude of the prior panel, though. I think it's very unproductive when we come here trying to get information and instead we get asked to support the governor's measure, right? Which again, I think is getting a little bit harder to do when we start to see a lot of these facts coming from a study that the people of Guam paid for. So again, I thank this panel. Thank you, Dr. Tyson, also for your heartfelt testimony. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Barnett. And thank you to all of those who testified today. We have some significant progress, I think, or discoveries. For example, we learned earlier today that the CDC lab is no longer they're no longer planning to combine that with the hospital, so that takes out one element of the complex. The CDC lab, for those who missed it earlier, is going to be located next to the University of Guam, according to those who testified today. We've also learned, and we know, that Guam Behavioral Health is currently expanding its facilities due to their diligent pursuit of grants. And as we've talked about, many of the factors that were laid down in the previous oversight hearing that we had on this property have been cleaned up, pun intended, that they've cleaned it up. That was actually the best news I've heard in a long time, that when I saw Army Corps slides of how clean that property is, the debris is gone. So really it is going to be a question now. I mean, we've seen the practicality of Ypao Point, right? We've seen the drive time studies, we've seen the cost analysis for infrastructure and other elements that make it practical, and we've heard your testimonies today. I'm trying to consider everybody's points still, right, and make sure that we've covered all bases, and we're not going to be able to cover everything in Ypao Point. For example, I'm not sure the feasibility of a helicopter pad there. I'd like to see that, if that's an essential element, that's a deal breaker, or what else. But for almost all the other elements, I'm hoping that we have a practical solution. So I'm still willing to accept any testimony. I also want to commend those who have cleaned up that site. I know we have to address Chamorro Land Trust Commission for Ypao, ancestral lands for Atacao, or any of the other sites we're going to have to address on Chamorro Land Trust or Guam Ancestral Lands Commission and their beneficiaries. So I definitely hope to work with the governor to do that. I think she's willing to do that for a search in the site, and we'll see what we can arrange for any other site considered. All right. Thank you again, colleagues, for staying with me during
Speaker,
this time and the previous
can I
hearing.
just add one more line
Says
out of respect
Senator,
to the...
Dr. Shea, pardon?
Yeah, for the Chamorro Land Commission, I would really plead with them, and I represent the voice of many of us, is that the best investment for that land is not to build a casino or a convention center, but to build a hospital so that you can save more Chamorro lives. You know, so I think that's important for them to consider, rather than just the monetary aspect of it, because I think that's important for the Chamorro. I may not be on Guam forever. We're not going to be on Guam forever. 27 years is a long time for me to be here. But I also want the governor to know, if she's watching or listening or at a loop, I'm sure they are, is that we're not against her. We want her to succeed. But to succeed, you have to be able to work with the doctors and the nurses who are going to be on the ground. We're the soldiers on the ground to save lives. We're the one that getting our hands on the patients and getting the arteries stopped. So I hope she listens and work with us, be part of the solution. And I hope she's listening to that, and we want her to succeed. We want the panel here at GMH to succeed. I want Mr. Kando to succeed. But to come here and keep saying no, 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 that's not productive. And that's why this hospital never getting built. So I hope that Senator Barnett's bill gets passed. I hope Ypao Point is the one. And the $6 million study, I want to thank Matrix again, and thank your speaker for the time.
Jesus Masi. Again, thank you, everyone. That will conclude our hearing. It is 6:05 p.m. Jesus Masi.